Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are starting a new month where we have a couple of birthdays and some chosen films or voted on films.
It's just my birthday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's your birthday, and there were definitely some chosen films. Luck of the draw, actually, because we got the Star Wars trilogy these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But let's go into the first one. Ron, did you want to take us away with the original Star Wars?
Yes. So as most people probably know, Star Wars came out in 1977. Was created by George Lucas. There's many films and television series, video games, novels, comic books, theme park attractions. Of course, we all know there was a extended universe of books originally that were canon until Disney bought them. We won't go into that. Just want to personal note: I was sitting in the movie theaters in 1977 when it came out. A little 4-year-old Kroll with my uncle watching the movie. Getting scared out of my wits when I saw Darth Vader for the first time. But absolutely fell in love with the movie, and it started a lifelong journey of love for the franchise as a whole. So, yeah, and of course, the stars Sir Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford as Han Solo, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, and a host of others as well. Um, this movie, like I said, it means a lot to me, and I absolutely love it. So why don't we go into first impressions here, and we'll start with Dave. Why don't you tell us your first impression of Star Wars?
Okay. Well, I'm not exactly sure when I first saw Star Wars, but I know that it was I was fairly young. I know that my grandfather had a set of the VHS before me, and I ended up watching it at his place. He also had like all of the Star Trek stuff taped, like recorded and stuff.
Sorry.
You can boo Star Trek, but there are more books in the Star
Yeah,
Trek
yeah, yeah,
universe.
yeah. We went through this on our discussion yesterday. I'm only kidding. Go ahead.
But in any case, before the fights start, I enjoy the franchise too. It's a lot of combination of martial arts with space. It's kind of an opera, just
Oh,
sitting back.
this is a space opera.
But it is enjoyable to watch. It's got like several different factions fighting against each other. I mean, and it's got a young kid that he wants to be part of it all, and has some tragedies happen, and ends up finding some friends along the way and stuff like that. So I enjoy all of the at least the original trilogy, as far as I know. And I think some of the characters have become iconic and memorable. There are even quotes that come from this that we use constantly in our podcast, like "That's No Moon," or
Well, your
things
other
of that.
your other podcast is called what?
Delusions of grandeur.
Delusions of Grandeur, which if anybody has seen Empire Strikes Back, I mean, I'm sorry, Return of the Jedi, it's what Han Solo says to Luke Skywalker after he tells him he's a Jedi. I'm out of it for a little while, and everyone has delusions of grandeur.
But I had a good time returning to this film, and just hope everybody else had an enjoyable time with it as well.
All right, Dave, that sounds awesome. Yeah, you finished with your first impression?
Yeah, for now.
All right, moving on to Tammy. Was this your first time watching Star Wars?
No, I don't actually remember the first time I saw it because well, yesterday I let you know that I watched Empire Strikes Back first, not knowing that this was the first movie because I was a kid, and my great grandmother took me to see Empire Strikes Back and said we were never going to something like that ever again. So, yeah, Chewbacca scared her. So, but so I don't remember when I actually watched Star Wars because I didn't know being a kid that that was first. When I like I said when I saw Empire, when I I've seen it several times. I know that. And it was fun to go watch it again last night and uh yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch. Um, definitely have some favorite characters and things like that. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to watching the other two later this month, just because it's been a while since I watched the first. Well, it was supposed to be the first three. So, um, but yeah, I had fun rewatching it.
Awesome. Is that your first impression?
Yeah, it was fun.
Shorter than I thought. um, all right, moving over to you, Jake. Was this your first time watching Star Wars?
Well, I tell you, when I heard that we were covering Star Wars this month, I said, "The fuck is Star Wars? I never heard of that."
Right? Who's heard of Star Wars? So out there.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, I have something in common with what Tammy just said because my first exposure was also Empire, and I remember very clearly, very distinctly, probably around fourth or fifth grade. I was at a birthday party at a friend's house, and it was movie time, and they put on Empire. And I remember not knowing what the hell it was about. Like, I think I'd heard of Star Wars. I mean, how do you not hear of Star Wars? But I had never seen any of them. And there's that scene in the ice planet, Hoth, I think it is, and they got to the part where he cuts open the creature to crawl inside, and I was like, I'm done. And basically, I left the room. I was everyone else was watching the movie. I was doing something else the whole time. And for years, I had no interest in coming back to the franchise. I did not watch any of them all the way through until sometime in high school. I don't remember when. And I don't know for sure which one I saw first. I think it was Jedi. I do know the first one I saw in theaters was Return of the Jedi on one of those re-releases they did. Which ended up being kind of weird because then when they did the prequels for the long time, Revenge of the Sith was one of the few movies I had seen. I actually saw that 4 times in theaters. I think it's the only Star Wars film I saw more than once in theaters. Not by choice, of just going with people. So I have some backing in Star Wars. It gets even more. It's the whole way through. It's been a wild and crazy journey. Most of the time, me kind of laughing at the super fans, in largely disagreeing with them. I know that if we get around to the newest of the trilogy, the newest series, we're going to have some much more polarizing opinions than we do with this.
Oh yeah.
But
Definitely that's where majority of the toxic fan base comes from is the sequels. I mean, there's still some from the prequels, but nowhere near as much as there is from the sequels now.
and
And,
there was a lot
it's way
for the
worse than it
sequels.
ever was for the
Holy
prequels.
crap! Holy crap! But
The sequels are really, really, really bad. Yeah.
well, like I said, there are some differences of opinion on those. Not being a super fan, I rate all the movies closer together, I think, than a lot of people do. But I could not tell you the first time I saw this movie. I really don't know. I think I had seen the original trilogy by the end of my freshman year in college. But
So you'd say what year was that? Just ballparking when you finally think you've seen them all.
well, let's put it this way: the prequel trilogy was coming out when I was in college,
Okay, so like 1999.
around there. Yeah. So
Wow. Wow.
essentially,
About 22 years after I did.
but yeah, that's like I said. I had zero interest in watching this until I.
Well, I'm glad you decided to give it a go again. I mean, you
Well,
know, there are people that don't like Star Wars. You know, like my daughter, my own flesh and blood.
You must feel so betrayed.
Yeah, I do. I feel like Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. You know,
Right.
you, my daughter, how could you do this?
I'm thinking of a line from another classic film from the same era, from one of Lucas's buddies. You broke my heart, Frito. Broke my heart. But anyway, this particular movie, I have always had mixed feelings on, and it's really weird. For one, I have become a huge fan of Mark Hamill. I am a huge fan of his, especially as a voice actor. But when he's in something now, it gets my interest. But I can't freaking stand him in this movie.
I got something interesting to say about that when we get into it. Something just newly discovered.
He grows on you a little bit. But in this movie, he is just a whiner. He's always whining. He doesn't Luke is just
and Leia is bossy and ungrateful.
Essentially, yeah. He's not.
And of course, Han Solo is a scoundrel, but the way he's a scoundrel just makes you like him. You know, even though you know he's not really the good guy, but he's definitely not a bad guy. You know, and he's not pretending to be anything he's not. He is. You know, he knows who he is, and he lets you know who he is. You know,
it's that little vest that does it for me.
Yeah, it's a new revelation for me this year watching it. Like I said, I'll say it on my turn, but yeah.
Let's do the impressions and then we'll do the characters. But basically, my impressions of, I mean, all the characters are iconic, you know, at this point.
Yeah.
But going back and seeing where it all started, you can tell that Lucas did not have the budget to fully support this story.
You definitely
can
not.
tell that he didn't entirely know he'd be able to continue it. There are a number of things that probably should have been done better. I'll talk about a couple of them as we get to them. But it is still a fun movie. So,
and for its time, it still pushed the envelope for science fiction well beyond any other movie like it. So I mean, even though it was missing some things
One
for
thing,
its time, it was well beyond any other movie.
yeah, one thing I won't dispute is the film's importance to cinema overall, and to the movie business overall.
And storytelling and
Well,
everything.
one of my favorite things is that people thought George Lucas was crazy because he took a pay cut in order to take sole merchandising rights.
Right.
And, well, I wonder who had the last laugh there.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he even had the first laugh. I mean, that dude was selling empty cardboard boxes.
I mean, yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, he put up most of the money for Empire Strikes Back, and again for Return. But Empire Strikes Back, you think, oh well, he was he wasn't really rich per se when
He was
he
on his
put up
way.
money for Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it was still heavy on him
Yeah.
to put up all that money personally. But of course it paid out in spades, and he made well more than that back. But yeah, he because he wanted to not what happened with Star Wars happened with Empires. He wanted to do everything he wanted to do. He wanted the budget, and he knew that the studio wasn't going to give him the full budget that he wanted. So, you know, he put a lot of his own personal money into it to be able to do with what he wanted.
Which I don't know why they didn't. I think I'm remembering correctly that the esteemed so-called holiday special came out before. Yeah, that came out before Empire. I don't know how that didn't finish paving the road, but anyway.
Yo, bro, it sold a lot of Boba Fett's. I'll say that much.
Right.
It got people excited for Star Wars at least.
Oh.
And it introduced Boba Fett, which I was never a huge fan of Boba Fett, but it was a really good introduction to Boba Fett, and it was I think I liked him better in that short than I did overall in the movies.
That was one last thing I want to make sure I mention, and then I'll pass it along, as you know, and where but there is a shot of Boba Fett in the movie I watched. So basically, I have what looks like a really awesome collection of the first 6 films. But the thing that annoys me is that it came after Lucas started mucking with the cuts. And he basically said, screw the old movie. This is my current vision, and it's the only one that exists. I really don't know if we'll ever. I'm hoping for like maybe a Criterion or Arrow set somewhere down the road.
I just wanted to get the original VHS version just to have them. I like the stuff he added, with the exception of Han Solo shot friggin' first, and that was stupid. But the rest I kind of like. But yeah, Boba Fett's in it. Boba Fett's in the original. He's standing there. And he talks to him. He says, "No disintegration." And he looks right at Boba Fett when he says it. You know, so
in the original cut.
Yeah, I don't know. I gave up trying to figure all that out long ago. All I know is if it doesn't have CGI fucking frogs in it, I can at least watch it.
Yeah, it's in the original. It's in the original cut. Yeah, the Boba Fett is definitely in the original Empire Strikes Back.
Well, Empire, yes. No, I mean this one. So basically, I just want to note that I watched a version that I'm almost certain is different from the version.
Okay, yeah. Boba Fett was not in the original Star Wars because, like I said, and
like
you pointed out,
Jabba's definitely featured
Yeah,
prominently.
Boba was introduced in the holiday special.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, is that what you meant by CGI frogs, Mo?
Yeah, there's a bunch of bullshit all over those like specialized Star Wars versions. I'm not a fan of them adding in the CGI stuff to the old movies. And then on top of that,
I did feel like Jabba looked a little more polished than I was remembering him. But yeah, it's
Jabba wasn't in the original Star Wars and the original.
Yeah, it was like a human dude.
At all.
He's in this cut. He's in,
Yeah, they added him afterwards, which I thought was cool for the adding, but yeah, he was never in it originally.
It's
They-
neat.
they-
I don't know that my life was hurting without Jabba and A New Hope, though.
well, it wasn't hurting. Like I said, I liked it. Like I said, I
it's a
like most
cool
of the things
scene.
they added,
Yeah,
but it wouldn't it wouldn't have. I still love Star Wars as much as I always loved Star Wars without it. So it's didn't really add anything I had to add, but I just liked it.
yeah.
I like it more without it. Anyways.
Well, anyway, yeah, I guess that basically covers it for me. Then it's like I said, this is probably and it's probably only the third or fourth time I've actually seen the first movie. So I
Wow.
really do not have it memorized. You guys would know better than I do, but I did see there were a few moments where I was like, I really don't remember this. And the Jabba scene really jumped out at me, but that one I knew had been added.
Yeah,
Uh,
even the extra added,
yeah.
it's surprising that I actually remember each, but I've seen the originals so many times and then the
Mhm.
recuts so many times too that I know what's been added, what hasn't. And I have a clear memory about both. I couldn't actually say how many times I've seen Star Wars. I always say 100 times, but I mean, honestly, probably not 100, but definitely a lot. I mean, I definitely would say over 20 times. So,
Oh, shit.
I've seen
easily.
it 20 times. That's almost 100 times.
Well,
I
how people
definitely
like to
passed
exaggerate.
100 times with the original
I
trilogy
like
in
to
like high
exaggerate.
school,
Everyone likes to
probably.
exaggerate to some degree, and I don't exaggerate and say I've seen it thousands of times, but so I go a little higher. But honestly, I have seen it a ton, probably more than a lot of people have. No, not everybody, but definitely more than the average person, maybe the average fan. Okay, moving on. Mo, is this your first time watching Star Wars?
Yeah, you gotta up those numbers, bro. That's that's surprising to hear. I've definitely seen this at least 100 times. Because that original trilogy I used to just play on loop a lot once I got it on VHS tape.
Well, I didn't own
Uh,
it on VHS as a child and or even older, and yeah, so that's basically the problem. My uncle owned it, so every time when it was house, can we watch Star Wars? Can we watch Star Wars? Can we watch Star Wars? So that's how I got to watch it. Was
See,
going
the
to my uncle's
first
house.
one I got was when they just put it in Dolby or whatever.
It was more
Uh,
Star Wars I saw the most than Return of the Jedi. And although I wanted to watch Empire Strikes Back sometimes, as a kid, it wasn't my favorite, so it wasn't high on my to-do list.
I still fuck with Empire hard, but yeah, I mean, I got the box set when that Dolby one came out, and then later that specialized one, and so on and so forth. I've rebought Star Wars a lot of times. It's a little
I
bit
wish I
silly at
had,
this point. I even
but
bought one off Dane just because it had like Canadian titles, or French titles, because it was a Canadian release. No need to have it. I just have it because
hey,
I
you know
can.
what? You don't need to explain when it
Talking
comes to
about that
Star
one
Wars. There,
pack
there,
of all of them, I think I might have sold that to you.
there's
Was that me? Was that you?
many things that people have for the Star Wars collection that I had a cereal box that
Yeah, most of it's useless.
I ate the cereal, but I kept the empty box just because it's a Star Wars cereal box. And yeah,
Good.
even though it tasted horrible, but it's still a Star Wars cereal.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever got any cereal.
The ice cream was good though.
This one I first saw at the library for sure. Well, not at the library, but like we checked it out of the library. My grandpa used to watch us a lot after school back in the day when we first moved down here from Canada. So I was probably 7 when I saw Star Wars the first time. And it just blew my mind, like right from picking it up. Because at our library, it was like just the cutout front of the VHS cover in these weird like plastic sleeves. And
Yeah.
you would like flip through them kind of like records. And I'm flipping through it and I get to that Star Wars one and it's the classic cover, like the old school cover of the VHS where it's Luke, holding the lightsaber up in the air. And it's very Frank Frazetta-esque, which I'm sure is what drew my attention to it on account of seeing a lot of that artwork through my uncle. So I was like, whoa, what's this rad space fucking warrior shit right here? And I checked it out and watched it and loved it. And then it took me a little while, I think, to realize that there was, sequels to it and shit. I think my uncle might have actually been the one to key me into that, but pretty quickly after, I went back and rented, the other two. But this one, I fell right in love with it. As a little kid, I think you can relate to the whininess of Luke in this role, in this particular film, and his desire to get out of his boring town and see like the awesome sights of the universe and get into some action and assorted hijinks. I was too little to be as angsty about it as him, but definitely it was like, yeah, this town is kind of boring. It'd be cool to fucking like fly a spaceship. In reality, I'm terrified of speed and heights, and none of that would work for me. And space, it's one of my biggest fears.
In fairness, the angst level is lower than Anakin in the prequels, so there's.
We don't need to discuss that, but yes, you're right. And I just love it, man. I mean, this first
he's
Star Wars
whinier
is
than Anakin was.
Nah. But this first Star Wars is so like just nostalgic and warm for me. It's like a hot bowl of porridge or something. It's one of those comfort movies, In hindsight, I guess not a lot happens in it compared to the other movies, but it leaves you with such a sense of like imagination and wonder when you watch this the first few times as a kid, and then when you dig into the sequels, it just pays off tenfold. But I don't know, man. I really like this movie still. I think it's, one that I probably underappreciated for a lot of years because of my love for Empire Strikes Back and the Ewoks and everything in Return of the Jedi. But going back to this more and more as an adult, I realized that this might be like one of the stronger standalone Star Wars movies, if that makes sense. Because a lot of the things that Jake already mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, if he had never done any other Star Wars movie,
I'd still be real fine.
It would still be a huge movie and a huge success.
Mm-hmm. It very much has that like pulp sci-fi serial element to it, where like if this was all that existed, I'm pretty sure people still would have wrote novels based on it. I'm pretty sure there still would have been eventual video games and board games and whatnot based on it, just because it's such a cool idea that
maybe not quite as big as it is now, but
right, yeah, it might have been more of a cult niche kind of a thing, but I think it still would have generated some of that. And yeah, man, I mean, this is where it all began. I love the original Star Wars trilogy, and I love the expanded universe novels that almost entirely for the first like decade and a half of them built off of the original trilogy until we got, all the prequel movies and the subsequent films. That was it. Everything in the expanded universe back in the Bantam Spectra days used to be just based off of these first three movies. And so I just was a kid in a candy store for a long time with all that stuff. And yeah, if we eventually do those new movies, I might skip them. But, I'm not a huge fan of other Star Wars stuff.
Well, I'd really like your opinion, especially if you don't like them, because
I like things in them.
Actually, I'd actually like to find somebody that likes all three of the sequels, because that would be a polarizing. I think that would be polarizing. I don't know anyone that likes all three of the sequels. I used to before I watched them a couple more times.
Yeah, I don't know. This one introduces some rad shit, though, that is definitely some of my favorite Star Wars stuff as well. I mean, obviously, you got all of our characters that get introduced, but you also got stuff like the Jawas, which I just am endlessly fascinated with, maybe because of my love of this movie. Like, even in a lot of the novels, the Jawas end up being my favorite parts of them. Shouts out to Darksaber.
I love in the novel there's one story where it's basically it's this Jawa is hurt and Luke helps him, and
yeah, that's Darksaber, bro.
Is so happy and Luke treats him just like I don't want to say human because it's an alien, but he just treats him like another person, anybody else or friend, and the Jawa is just so surprised because they're like smelly and they have this reputation, and most people just kind of ignore them at best, and Luke went out of his way to help him and everything, and I love that.
Yeah, those dudes end up teaming up for like most of the rest of the story. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Jawas are very
and the Sand People. Sand People, another huge thing for me in Star Wars that I've always been really fascinated with. Anytime they come up in stories, I'm about it as well. It's got some scorching family fucking slaughter going on in here too, so that's definitely something piqued my interest as a little weirdo. And of course, Darth Vader, awesome fucking moon bases, crazy spaceships. I mean, miniatures, everything that I kind of liked about movies and science fiction was packed in here as well. So it's hard not to love this first Star Wars movie. I can understand it not being a lot of people's favorite because it's got some strong competition, but I kind of always come back to it as the core of it all because that's what it is,
It
and
was
it's
my
pretty
second favorite
strong
for a long
core.
time.
It's a fine film indeed, especially for being what's essentially like a really ambitious piece of low budget schlock. It was the little schlock engine that could, and it definitely did. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it
done did
definitely,
it.
even though it pushed the envelope, it definitely could fit into that category originally.
That's it, man. Watched it, loved it, and it's given me a lot of years of enjoyment since. But I think that's probably the biggest thing I can come up with is that it is probably the strongest standalone Star Wars movie, maybe next to Rogue One. I know other people don't don't appreciate that in here, but
We just covered that yesterday. That
yeah,
was my Sunday's birthday pick. Should have come on. It was fun. It was a great discussion. Tammy, I think, said more about that movie than she ever has about any other, including her own picks. So yeah, she had a lot to say about Rogue One, and we all agreed we enjoyed it. As most
well,
people do.
most of the other Star
But
Wars shit kind of
you know,
feels like, I guess you could say Phantom Menace maybe it could be a pretty strong contender for a standalone too, but I feel like that it is
I have to
more
disagree with you on
intentionally
that one,
pushing
but
you forward into a sequel.
I have to disagree. Phantom Menace is still my second least favorite film in the entire
Well,
11
your
movies.
opinion aside, I'm saying as a standalone film, you could say that one could work, but again, they were very much more intentionally pushing you into
I
a
mean,
sequel.
I guess you're right. It could be a
Actually, yeah,
standalone
maybe.
film,
I
but
guess we'll
I
never
don't
know.
think it would be a good standalone film because it just wasn't all that great of a film.
Well, again, that's personal opinion, bro. But I don't love it either. But I'm just saying, the intent for you to go right into watching a sequel with that one's a little bit more.
I'm not saying it would
Oh
fix
man,
the issue, but 90% of the well, okay, maybe 80% of the problem is Jar Jar.
All right, I'm already over it. We can move on. Point being, it's the strongest standalone film. There you go.
All right, moving on to you, Dustin. Is this your first time watching Star Wars?
Definitely not. I first saw Star Wars. I was maybe like 2 or 3. It's very hard to remember exactly when. I
Like,
first saw it on. So my dad liked to rent tapes, and sometimes he would copy them.
mhm.
And so my first time I saw Star Wars was on a homemade VHS tape with Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back on it, like back to back.
Nice.
And it took kind of a while to find Return of the Jedi. We always had to rent Return of the Jedi. I don't know why he never just like knuckled down and bought it.
Yeah, back then you could actually record stuff. It was before they could figure out how to stop people from recording rentals. They'd tell you not to, and it was against the
They
law.
could never stop you if you knew what
Yeah,
you
they
were
couldn't
doing.
stop
You could
anybody.
get
I mean, you
around all
can't.
that stuff.
They don't even really stop people now, even with the technology they've got. But yeah, it was a lot easier to record VHS. Of course, the copies would never last that
Because
long.
we had VCRs, but
I think it was kind of an unspoken thing that after a certain point, most people they understood most people were doing it. I think if you had 2 VCRs, you were going to figure it out eventually. And boy, was it glorious!
Or later on, not even needing two, you'd have one with two slots. They just added it on there, and well, here you go, make it easier for a copy.
well, anyway, so I saw them both pretty close together first time when I was little, and they really like blew me away. I was a Star Wars kid for quite a while, and actually, with the Expanded Universe books, I would read those instead of some of the more popular things. I mean, I would read Goosebumps and whatnot too. I was really big into Goosebumps, but I would read any Star Wars novel I could find. I especially liked the ones kind of geared more toward kids. because
those-
those are more like adventure-y kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Crystal Star and shit like that. Those were
Yeah,
banging.
they were great books though. I read both the Junior Jedi's and the little
Yeah, they were
kids.
fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Untold Kids and like the Jedi Adventures. Like those were awesome. Like I loved all of those. And like the Crystal Star, most people say it's not one of the good ones, but I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it.
I enjoy it quite a bit.
I liked it.
I think Courtship of Princess Leia was my favorite one because we got like a lot of like banter and jokes from like.
That is
That
a
was a really
surprisingly
good
good one. Yeah,
Isn't that where we got to? That we found out about the Nogaray, why they, when they showed up and why they became her personal bodyguards, and they always called her Lady Vader and everything. So it was definitely a great story.
It's so unassuming too, because the title makes it sound like it's gonna be lame, but it's fucking such a good book.
Well, if you don't like love, you
Henry
think it's lame.
distract the witch to buy time. And she's like, I'm going to torture you now. And he's just like, and he's like, just don't start with, and he's like, okay, try to think of something you don't need if we're getting battle. Just don't start with the teeth, okay? And so she starts like breaking his teeth with the force. And it's like, it hurts, but when he has to like draw his gun and like blast somebody, like it doesn't stop him. Like during that last battle. Like I remember that. There's also the Han Solo trilogy, which was
Great
3 books about young Han Solo. And this
I haven't read that.
I think it was one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars anything.
See, that's like the majority of my collection anymore, as I've just kept all the VHS box sets of the original trilogy. And then I do still own every single Bantam Spectra Star Wars novel. So it's something like, I think 50 or 60 novels. It's the whole first like 12 years of the expanded universe from, the Thrawn trilogy right after Jedi to whenever the fuck Del Rey and them started doing the majority of them.
I don't think I ever got to start the Thrawn trilogy because I had like that Star Wars encyclopedia that they made in the 90s, and I wanted to know more about like the characters, and where they went after the movies. So I focused on the ones like around like Han Solo and his family.
Oh, dude, you won't be disappointed with the Thrawn trilogy.
Oh yeah, it's
still
that was my
Star Wars shit.
That was my start into the extended universe, as it is most people, because it was the
It was the first one. Yeah,
it was the first one. And I
if I
started
had
with
to
that.
pick a favorite trilogy, it's the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah,
Hands
same.
down, like, better than any of the movies to me.
I've read that trilogy, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 times, and I'm not one to usually read too many books over again. But yeah, I read that whole trilogy at least 3 or 4 times. When I started reading all the Star Wars books, I started back with that one again. So
my dude Timothy Zahn's from Oregon too. No small point of pride for me.
oh, he is incredible. Anything he's even written the new canon version of Thrawn books, which I have not read because I haven't read anything new canon Disney bought. But I've heard a lot of great things about it. It's a little different than the original Thrawn, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I might give it a try one day. Anyway, you were saying, Dustin?
Anyway, I never got to the Thrawn trilogy because by the time I was there, I was a little older and I was starting to have my interest shift a little bit. Star Wars was always like a big part of my life for most of the elementary school years. And so, I mean, I've seen the first Star Wars and so many times. I didn't even rewatch it for today because, well, first of all, I was in the hospital and I ran out of time after getting home. And two, like, I know that story pretty well and I can remember quite a lot. So, but watching YouTube reactions to it too, which sort of helps refresh my memory for the major plot points. Because that's another thing I want to comment on with people. A lot of people online, like people like in their 20s and stuff, are like, I've never seen Star Wars, and I keep wanting to call bullshit on that. Because
maybe they haven't seen it, but they've seen stuff from Star Wars. It's too ingrained in pop culture.
Yeah. I mean, you may not have actually seen it, but you definitely know of it.
Exactly, like with Empire, with like Vader being Luke's father. Some people are like surprised by that, and it's like it's the worst kept secret in movie history. I mean, how have you not heard it in passing from anywhere before?
I think a big part of it too, though, is and several of us, myself included, and you're probably been guilty of this at some point. Star Wars fans can be fucking insufferable, dude. We're like, people that haven't seen it, that are in your friend circle, almost don't want to watch it just because of how you are about it. I've had girlfriends that didn't watch Star Wars and just never did, because I held it up on such a
The
pedestal.
hype train is such a thing with this one. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I have found it's waned for me as I've gotten older, and they've released progressively shittier movies. That helps, but there was a time.
Not to mention how toxic the fandom has gotten with the more recent films. That's probably turned some people off too.
Oh, for sure.
You know, Ryan Johnson can suck it.
Well, let's not get in the weeds with any of that. Yeah, but
that's all I have to say. I'm done.
People are allowed to make terrible films.
No soapbox. No, he's not. Not Star Wars.
Everybody is, without exception.
Not Star Wars. He's not allowed to make Star Wars bad films. He can go make anything else bad.
Star Wars shit way before these people ever got involved. Did you ever see the animated stuff? It's
way better
horrible.
than the crap he came up with.
I don't know.
Well, it depends on what animated stuff you're talking about, because like the Ewoks and Droids series,
I liked them as a kid. Don't hold up very well.
I never got to see much of them.
I'd watch the holiday special over and over and over again before I'd watch Last Jedi.
I've said that too, actually. Like I would sooner watch the holiday special twice in a row than see The Force Awakens again.
See, but I mean, that shit is super mad weird for people that aren't already into it too. When they see people like wishing death upon motherfuckers that directed a movie or something, they're like, maybe I can skip this one. I'll just be a fan of, whatever, Stranger Things or whatever the new thing is.
I can see that too, but
it's a hard fandom to edge into for a newcomer, so I can believe that there's people that haven't actually watched it, but they know of it, as we said.
Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot that sticks with you in this movie because it establishes its universe very like organically. Like you get information that you need in kind of quick bursts that also like you don't miss. It's like, what were the Jedi? And Obi-Wan explains it like quickly, concisely, to the point. Like nothing in this movie drags or feels long or anything like that. Like it all moves along like a perfect machine.
Yeah, it's very uncomplicated. It gets right to the point. I mean, it's a timeless sort of a story. Small town kid wants to get out there and see the world or see the universe in this case. There's fantastical elements with space wizards and knights, basically, and evil fucking sorcerers and stuff, and that's all made very apparent. I mean, there's a lot of depth that was added to Star Wars later, but at its core, it's really just a few Akira Kurosawa ideas and then stuff ripped from fantasy and Pulp Fiction and stuff like that, all kind of thrown into a blender.
Exactly like that, trying to be like a modern myth. I think was one of the phrases Lucas used to use. Was like he was trying to draw from mythology to make something along those veins.
Right. Yeah. Something that could become, it really is sort of, what do you call it? Like, I don't want to say something lame, like Great American Folk Story, but it is sort of like, like a modern version of that kind of stuff done through like a really nerdy science fiction lens, of course. But there is something wholesome and very like American and there's some special magic going on at the core of this Star Wars movie that makes it easy to latch on to and then build on,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree with all that. But anyway, I mean, this movie's just so good. Like, wow. One thing I remember from Ebert's reviews of this is how he had always appreciated the backgrounds, like the creatures in. I think he said about the creatures in the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's like, all these different alien species would be the centerpiece of the lesser movies, but here, like, Lucas just pans over them, as if they were like inhabiting this world and just normal.
Yeah, could have used a little more B. Arthur, but I get it.
That was a whip story. Oh my lord. Man, I didn't see that holiday special till I was an adult, and like the rumors did not do it justice because it is so unbelievably bad.
It's fucking magnificent is what it is. It is the
It
perfect
is.
train wreck of
It
like
is.
everything that can go wrong going wrong, but it's still somehow holding together. It reminds me when you're watching it of like a cocaine fueled version, movie industry version of that whole minecart scene in Indiana Jones. Like at any moment it could have just fallen apart, but somehow they muscled through and gave us a finished product that most people wish didn't exist, and I applaud them for that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that assessment. It's such a bizarre film. It kind of mesmerizes you a little bit. It's like, what's going to happen now? Like, this is following no structure or logic. But anyway, so yeah, I've had a great experience with Star Wars all the way up through probably like 2015 when the Nightmare film came out. Like I used to watch most of the newer. I watched most of the newer animated stuff too. Like when we get to the Clone Wars area, like I've seen the first animated Clone Wars, which is great, and then the CGI animated Clone Wars, which got better as the seasons went on. Like it started out okay and got really great. And I saw a bit of Rebels. I think I saw most of Rebels. I probably missed an episode or two, and then I lost track of it after Rebels. So Rebels is kind of neat because we did get Thrawn like as a canon character. I don't think they maybe did as much of him as they probably should have, but I think it was fine. And supposedly there's another series with Thrawn coming in it too. So.
Fuck yeah. That's rad. I find I have a really low motivation to stay up to date with Star Wars pretty much after the prequel trilogy. I think at that point I'd already accepted that the best Star Wars I was ever going to get happened in the novels, and that's hard to top because novels are always like a bit more of an experience than a movie.
That's exactly how I felt. Like, I mean, watching The Force Awakens, I was like, I could write a better story than this.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't care anymore, All of it's just Jedi and like whirling lightsabers, and I get it. That's what people come for. I'm in the minority, but that's why I liked Mandalorian so much, because it just went away from that.
You'll love Andor too.
I'm sure I will. So we're gonna break down the plot of this bitch real quick, because it's pretty simple.
When
you get right to it.
Farm boy goes off in the world, loses his aunt and uncle, and just destroys the empire at the end.
Well,
sort of.
Just kidding.
You're zoomed out pretty far, so let's zoom back into the plot of the first Star Wars.
I watched these things where like describe Star Wars really badly,
Well, anyway, Princess Leia is being pursued by Darth Vader because she still plans for the Empire's new super weapon. And this is sort of a lot of information to take in for audiences all at one time, but the way it's like shot and the way it's delivered is like they speak matter-of-factly, like, it's almost like they assume you already know the characters. It's like, well, we don't skip for the princess this time. What have you done with the plans? And you don't have a whole lot of time to ask, who's Princess Leia? Princess who? What plans? Like, the movie just moves along, but it answers those questions fairly quickly as well. And, you see Leia, you see Darth Vader. Like, you can tell Darth Vader is, like, the main villain of this right away because of the entrance he makes. So, especially with him, like, choking that guy out, first of all. And then, anyway, so after that sequence where the plans are, send in an escape pod to Tatooine.
They're basically uploaded to a helper droid, and him and his companion get launched to the planet on an escape pod.
But let's start the real talk about it. We start out with the famous crawl, where it's going across the screen saying it's episode 4, which I'm sure a lot of people who are older than I was when they first saw it was like, wait, episode 4? I'm like, where's 1, 2, and 3?
Actually, that I feel was one of the changes, because
I don't think it said that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this famously is the one that started a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Yes.
Yes.
It does not do that on the current version or the version I saw.
It doesn't. It didn't have A New Hope either. It was never called A New Hope. It was just called Star Wars.
But it just picks up the story in the middle without that tag at the beginning. And I'm like, screw that. It's supposed to start a long time ago.
That's so it starts a long time. I mean, and then you hear the John Williams famous music, and like I said, every time I hear it, I know someone's watching something to do with Star Wars. So it's just in itself is completely so unique and awesome, and every movie, with the exception of Rogue One, has had the crawl and like music. Even a lot of video games have had used it as well. So
that is my own particular axe to grind with this series. Like,
then of course.
Well, how many times was John Williams nominated for original score for the Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, dude's been remixing his shit for fucking decades and just swooping
some
awards.
They need a. That is a bullshit. It is not original scores at this point. They're great scores.
Maybe add us another category for, like variation on a suite or something like that. Basically a remix category.
Or, adapted score would be easy, but whatever.
See, there's a big what to do made about that opening text crawl, and I get it. It's iconic, but my favorite thing is that crawl of that fucking Star Destroyer, baby. Like that thing going over and just how immensely big it feels with that, like,
I was just about to get into
shot
that.
Looking up at it. It's been parodied a few times and stuff, and I get why. I mean, it's like as a kid, I could not give a shit about those opening text crawls. I mean, I don't think I actually read those until middle school.
I don't think I was really old enough to read them at 4, but the music just got me hyped.
Every time I watch A New Hope, that's the moment where like I get fucking psyched, is when that Star Destroyer is crawling.
But when the Star Destroyer comes out and it starts with this space battle and this humongous fucking ship, and just it's like, wow, it's so immense, and you really get the grasp of how big it is compared to the ship it's chasing, and you don't even know what's going on, who's who, but you automatically feel like you should be rooting for the smaller ship. If you like good guys, anyways. If you like the bad guys, then maybe not. But anyways, and then we start the inside the ship, and we see a bunch of rebels. They are waiting with guns drawn as they're about to be boarded by the ship that had been chasing them, and it breaks through, and we see stormtroopers, men in white armor rushing through, and at that point I was a little confused, because to me, at 4 years old, I thought the good guys were supposed to wear white, and they were clearly bad guys. So just a little note there I like to point out. It's funny.
Well, and then, of course, Vader.
Then Darth Vader shows up through, and I mean, was like, deathly afraid. Like, there was no doubt in my mind who the bad guy. He was the bad guy. He was the main villain, and immediately I was just like, freaked, because he was so scary and immense on the screen, and
that was personally one thing that I never understood, because I was never afraid of Darth Vader, but a lot of people have said that, and I'm always kind of like, really? Like, not like, more like intrigue as to how
yeah.
I think it's more funny when people say they were afraid of Yoda or Chewbacca.
That I guess makes some sense. Yoda, he is a little weird swamp critter, but Darth Vader, I was like,
and flying monkeys,
hyped on that dude the first time I saw him. But I've always been one of those little kids that like was more into the heels and wrestling and stuff. Like, we've had tons of conversations about this, me and Kroll, but I love a good villain. It's
that's why I pointed out, in case that anyone that likes to root for villains, you might not be thinking the same as me, but.
We get him front and center in this. Like, you get introduced to the villain before you get introduced to any of the other real characters other than Leia and the droids. So it's like he's kind of the main bill,
Yeah. And anyways, so he goes in there, and then they try to tell him it's a ambassador ship and consul ship, and he's like, if this is a consul ship, where is the ambassador? He's not falling for it. He knows they have the plans. And of course, years later, when you watch Rogue One, you actually see him physically seeing them taking the plans. But of course, when you watch this away for Rogue One, yeah, that didn't happen. So, but Darth Vader knows that they're lying, and
The visual.
he tortures people to get the information by using the Force to choke people. I mean, he's huge; he could physically pick them up and choke them.
By
But
hand in this one,
he uses the Force, which makes it just so much awesome and makes him so much more evil, I think. And he basically tells get the survivors, has all the stormtroopers not kill, stun, because he needs the information. If he kills everybody, he won't find the information of where the stolen plans are. So of course, they end up finding Leia after she puts the information in R2 unit, which is R2D2, which we know later. First, we just see it's a droid, astromech droid, R2D2, and she puts
Famously
something.
the most foul-mouthed character in all of cinema. We just don't.
Yeah, you
know for
got to
sure.
believe everything he says. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very funny. Yeah, so she gives him the information, and then basically the stormtroopers see her as a set for stun, and they shoot her, and you see some circles come out of the gun, and she falls down. Special effects weren't that bad for 77. They weren't the greatest, but for 77, I think they were pretty good. And yeah, I
Well,
feel like
they spruced them up, I think, for the
yeah,
added
they
special.
definitely did. If you watch it, the original is not quite
Yeah.
as polished, but even the original still wasn't that bad. At least not the scene. I do have a scene where I always laugh, even I think when I was 4. I don't know. At least when I was young, I definitely laughed at, and then we'll get to it in a minute. But anyway, so they capture Leia, and she's brought forward, and she said, the Senate's not going to stand for it, that she's part of the diplomatic um, journey, and, they don't know anything about these stolen plans. And meanwhile, R2 is running with C-3PO behind him, or, rolling to an escape pod, and C-3PO is like, you can't go in there when we deactivate it, trying to talk him out of this, and he's just not listening to 3PO at all. And 3PO gets shot at by a stormtrooper, and he ends up joining R2 anyways, even though he thinks it's a bad idea. And it gets jettisoned, and of course the Empire says, they think it just malfunctioned, and just decide not to shoot down or anything. And once Vader finds out this has happened, he realizes it must have been droid. Well, he says droids, so somehow he knew there was more than one droid.
I was actually fairly amused by this because it's like they go out and the one's like, the scanner's not picking up any life forms. And it's like, it must be a malfunction. Don't shoot at it. It's like,
it's bizarre.
Didn't they also say that, hey, there's another one? Like there was already one jettison?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's sloppy. I mean, if I'm gonna fucking board a ship, I'm going weapons hot on anything leaving it.
Yeah, I agree. If if it wasn't for the storyline, they going by I know the Empire, they would have shut that shit down. But that would ruin the story. So
they would have tried.
So we had to do plot armor on that one as
Maybe
well.
they could have fucking winged it, and it could have crash landed. They were droids after all. Not humans.
True, but they decided not to go for that. So, but yeah, so they take Leia hostage, and they don't really show if they take any other prisoners or kill them. Just assume they probably took them hostage. Probably gonna try to reprogram into stormtroopers, because that's what the Empire did. They brainwashed, and maybe some people didn't even brainwash. They just automatically liked the Empire and thought they were good or whatever. As I've talked to some people that are like that.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand from the novels, it was a lot of conscription from certain planets, and then like the brainwashing stuff was more of a specialized thing they were trying to do, you know, like to get more, obviously.
Yeah,
But
'cause there
certain
was.
people were just like regular dudes, you know, that was like,
Well,
oh,
yeah, well,
well,
like
you know.
in A Force Awakens, they were talking about brainwashing too. So, obviously that was the first order of the Empire, but I'm sure they got it from the Empire. So, but yeah. So then we go on to the planet of Tatooine, which we don't know the name of it yet, but it's a desert planet with two suns, not one but two, and they are come out of the podcast, and C-3PO is kind of was following R2, and he's like, we should go this way, and R2, wants to go the other way. He's like, fine, you go that way, I'll go this way, and then he starts walking off and starts saying that R2 tricked him into going that way, and then it's his fault, and that he's now lost, and it's all R2's fault. And how horrible R2 is, and then of course he sees the transport. He's like, hey, I'm safe, go here, and he doesn't know who it is, but to him, being a droid, anything is better than walking around in the sand. So of course, we find out it's Jawas, and he ends up being reunited with R2, who he's so happy to see, even though 5 minutes earlier he was cussing him out.
And of course, we get the famous iconic scene where they comb the desert.
Yeah.
I would say false.
Actually, honestly, when the Jawas showed up, I was hearing like the ding 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 ding
ding
ding ding ding ding ding ding ding,
which actually is an appropriate connection to make through this movie, considering that the what do they call that? The Colonel something or other March was heavily featured in The Bridge on the River Kwai, which was a Sir Alec Guinness film. So then they reappropriated it for Spaceballs, possibly because of that connection. But another way that this one shows its influence, I think it's a good time as any to mention. 3PO and R2D2 are kind of, I would say, probably a good 50 to 70% of the reason, maybe more, that the 80s was the era of comic relief sidekick characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also good. Sorry, Jake.
No, that was it.
Well, it's important to note too that, and it can't go unstated with a New Hope or Star Wars, however you want to title it. This movie is just fucking Hidden Fortress from Akira Kurosawa, almost exactly. So R2, oh man, you really are gonna be blown away by it. It's insane how identical to this,
Lucas,
with the exception of a couple of scenes.
Yeah.
What's that?
Lucas was an avowed fan of Kurosawa.
Oh yeah, he says that. I mean, I've never seen the movie, so I can't say, but he says it was based on that movie. So
yeah, and it's a little more than based on it. It's basically ripping the entire thing in terms of the core plot. Basically the young wanderer or the young adventurer kid is what they had, but the two peasants are R2 and 3PO. And then you have like the old knight, basically, or the old samurai that's protecting the princess. And then you have like the old man mystic with them or whatever. And the plot is, after a certain point, obviously Star Wars diverges and becomes its own thing.
Yeah.
But the setup to this is pretty iconic. And then when you watch Hidden Fortress and you see the opening scenes of them wandering out of this like corpse-ridden battlefield that they were conscripted into and basically becoming C-3PO and R2D2, it's startling, the parallels between all of it. So these guys cemented a comic relief sort of bumbling duo sidekick thing that had been going on for a long time, but it wasn't the trend that Jake is referring to.
Yeah, it didn't become a trend to R2 and 3PO did it.
Yeah, and it's just interesting.
You already had, like, Disney was already known for the sidekick characters even before this. And
oh yeah, but Disney wasn't really known as much. I mean, they did do live action, but they were definitely, especially at that point, way bigger in the animation.
Well,
Well,
you
and
look,
the
I'm talking about the animation. Like that's been their MO from early on, is the sidekick characters. But the idea of but really, it honestly goes all the way back, at least to Shakespeare, to the idea of the so-called wise fool. He
right,
no
but where
wise.
in my mind it becomes revolutionary is in something like Hidden Fortress, maybe, unless he was drawing on an earlier influence. But Hidden Fortress is pretty fucking old. I don't remember the exact year it came out, but not too long after those earlier ones, you know. But basically, like having the two comic relief characters that are paired together, so they don't actually like C-3PO and R2 don't need any of these other fucking characters to be comic relief. It's
No.
built into their relationship with each other, you know.
And they
Yeah.
might have been building. I was thinking as I was watching this, I was kind of like, they're kind of like a sidekick version of like Abbott and Costello or Laurel
Yes.
Oh,
and
I always
Hardy.
think of actually to me Laurel and Hardy, but to me Laurel and Hardy are the best duos around. So that's my immediate thought is Laurel and Hardy, but yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that's Kurosawa might have been fucking drawing from that, you know, and then that
Right.
got into those
Exactly.
characters,
Or
and then it
Laurel and Hardy or
through the
Abbott and
DNA
Costello.
exchange got it into R2 and 3PO. But
Yep.
it is a glorious thing to watch, and the way that the chemistry is written between them through all of the films is great. I mean, that's one thing they never seem to have fucked up in Star Wars is the 3PO R2 dynamic.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move around the plot. So we find them back together on the Jawas, and then we see Luke and his uncle going to purchase some droids, and of course his aunt reminds him, make sure they get a droid that speaks Bachi if they can, and he meets C-3PO and says, "I suppose you're a translator droid," and he says yes, and he goes, "I have no use for that," and
They
he
say
ends up
it's a
finding out.
small droid, but then he points out that he can translate.
Yeah, he can. He's the operators they use on the planet are very close to what he worked on a ship. His first time working. So yeah, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not saying exactly what they said, but yeah, and then of course they go to buy another droid with them that was a R2 R4. And he came out and it blew up. It had a bad motivator, and C-3PO pointed out to Luke, and Luke was like, "Uncle Ben, this isn't bad motivator." And of course, he's like, "What are you trying to pull on me?" And they offer a better one, and of course, 3PO was like, "How about that droid? I've worked with him before. He's great." And and then so they end up getting R2, who actually was trying to move as soon as 3PO was picked, and they had to zap him with the straining bolt because he's trying to take off.
Yeah,
And
I was kind of amused that 3PO gave him that glowing recommendation, and then before long he was saying like,
yeah, I know. I'm going to point that out. And also, but I love how he also says to R2, he's like, "Why I would stick my neck out for you is beyond me," but
well,
more banter between the two of them,
I'm trying to remember the
and
specific one I was thinking of. There was one that amused me.
yeah, it's a few scenes later. And so they bring him back, and Luke goes immediately to start cleaning the droids, and 3PO so happy to get his oil bath and feel clean because he's all scuffed up and dirty. Luke is physically cleaning R2. He comes across part of the message, and he's completely intrigued. Of course, this beautiful girl pops up and is asking for help, and so he wants to know more, and R2 basically tells 3PO to say that the straining bolt is making him so he can't play the recording. So it looks like, well, I guess he's too small to run away, and takes off the restraining bolt. Mistake number one. So then R2 shuts down completely, and when Luke asks about the recording, he's like, "What recording?" basically acting like he doesn't know what they're talking about. And C3 was like, the one you've been playing, like, you should play for him. He's our new master now, and R2 refuses, because R2 can be very stubborn when he wants to be. And Luke ends up leaving, going to eat supper and talk to his uncle about going
is actually
to
quite to him
go,
after he leaves.
yeah, and of course, Luke talks to his uncle and about leaving now this semester, to go with his friends off to war and join the rebellion and stuff, and he's like, you can do that. You can do that now.
Said he muted himself. Whoops.
Kroll, you're muted. You might want to unmute
Wow.
yourself.
Okay. So I don't know where I got muted, but Luke was having a discussion with his uncle about joining the rebellion, and basically his uncle was like, no, I need you still. It's the busiest time. We can hire more hands, next year, and always pushing him further, trying to keep him safe. Basically, he knows that it's not a good idea for him to go. At least now, I mean, he's raised him as a kid, so it's basically his son. He's the uncle, and Aunt Brute is kind of understands, like, he's too much like his father. Of course, his uncle's like, well, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
I
So
just remember that part whenever Luke's like, "Oh, but I wanted to go to Tashi for some power converters." Like,
you can waste time. You can waste time with your friends after your chores are done. Yeah, I kind of skipped that part, but yeah. So he ends up going in and checking, and finds 3PO hiding. He's like, what are you doing hiding back there? I'm sorry, I tried to stop him.
Well, this was the.
This is the scene you were talking about, right? Yeah. And then he goes, then he's like, oh, he's always getting himself into trouble. He's always like, really?
I was looking for the quote. He's like, it wasn't my fault, sir. Please don't deactivate me. I told him not to go, but he's faulty, malfunctioning.
He's always getting into trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hilarious after he just gave him a glowing recommendation. Yeah. 2 seconds later, yeah, it's hilarious. So it looks like, well, it's too late. We see people crawling all over. They'll just have to go first thing in the morning. And he said, that's where he says, that droid's going to cause me all kinds of problems. And C3, he's like, oh, he excels at that. And then, of course, we see Lars saying, where's Luke? And Drew's like, oh, he left early this morning. He's like, oh, did he take the new droids with him? She was like, I think so. Well, he better have, or there'll be hell to pay.
The other one I was looking at was Luke's like, boy, am I going to get it. That little droid's going to cause me a lot of trouble. And 3PO's like, oh, he excels at that, sir.
Yeah, I actually just said that word for word.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I actually got that right. And so then we go back to Luke looking for R2, and they kind of find him. And then, of course, he knows his sand people, even though it's daytime, they're still out. And he's watching, and then all of a sudden you see a big stick and a sand person right behind him, and knocks him over the head. Then we fast forward a little bit, and we see old Ben finding Luke laying there. Of course, we know now that old Ben was actually kind of looking over him, so it's not coincidence that old Ben happened to show up.
I don't know if they've taken it out of like the newer cuts of the film or not, but do you remember whenever he's like going across in the speeder after that all, him leaving to find the R2 with 3PO and
well, yeah, that's still
there's
there.
like that fucking well, hold on, let me finish the thought. There's like that old serial style fade, like to show the passage of time and the traveling, where it's like and like does a little clock thing, and then it cuts to the next scene.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
I don't recall that, but I do recall one where I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think like Ben and Luke picking up 3PO or something, and it's like as they do it, the screen fades up. And I just thought that was a pretty fun little trick that they did.
Oh, yeah.
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 It's like those little things to give it some movement in between transitions, like some of those old serials would do, you know, which was probably cutting edge technology to do back in those days.
Yep.
Might have been.
Yeah. So old Ben comes and like I said, he actually scares the sand people away. He's like they're easily scared, but they will be soon back in greater numbers. So basically saying we gotta get out of here, you know, and they get C-3PO and R2 and they go back to old Ben's place. And well, first he actually says he's looking for an Obi-Wan Kenobi, and old Ben's like, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. And he's like and Luke's like, oh, he exists? I thought he was dead. And he's like, oh, he's not dead, not quite. You know him? Oh, of course I do. He's me. It's the way old Ben talks. And and of course, you know, they go back to old Ben's a place, and old Ben is talking to him and basically about his father. He's like, yes, he knew his father, and his father was not working on a freighter in his space mines, like his uncle said, that he was actually a fighter in the Clone Wars, as was Obi-Wan, and they were friends. And of course, Luke asked what happened to his father, and he said a student of his, Darth Vader, betrayed and murdered his father. And then, of course, he says, I have something for you that your father wanted you to have when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. And he hands him the lightsaber. You know,
Which he
obviously
promptly
a
looks
weapon.
down the business end
Yeah,
of.
I was going to say, of course,
Yeah.
Luke immediately looks down the right in the middle and has his hand very close to the button. And we could have had the end of the movie right there when
Right.
he, you know, pushed the button and you know, his whole head fell off. But luckily, he didn't push the button.
I did like how Obi-Wan handed him the saber without really any explanation.
Like saying, don't turn it on, don't push the
Yeah,
button,
exactly.
don't
No,
aim it at
no
yourself.
warning. No
Yeah,
warning.
he kind of didn't give him any freaking warning at all. And luckily, Luke hadn't done, but he was close. He was very close to killing himself.
And then also, it's also notable. You mentioned what he told him about his father. So
Yeah.
basically, Ben replaced one lie with another.
Well, yeah,
But
well, you know, like Ben said, it's from a certain point of view.
Well, this one is, I was going to say, you could call it a lie, but this
From a
one
point
is
of view.
much more rooted in the truth. It's much
Exactly.
closer to the truth.
It's rooted in the truth. His point of view, like he said later in Empire, I mean, I'm sorry, in Return of the Jedi, that you know what he said was true. That Darth Vader, you know, when Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, the man he knew as his friend and the father died and became this evil person. So he, in a sense, Darth Vader
It's
did
still some
kill.
pretty fucking manipulative shit.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. It was, but I mean, I get what Ben said, that you know, many truths we cling on to has to do with your own personal thoughts on it as well. So, which makes a lot of sense. It is true.
I mean, in a sense, yes, Anakin was murdered by Vader. It's not untrue.
It just wasn't. Yeah, exactly.
I don't
Not
think when a
untrue.
boy is
It's not
asking
100%
about
true,
the fate of
but it's
his
not untrue
father,
either.
I
So
don't
yeah.
think when a
What's
boy's
that?
asking about the fate of his father, he's trying to get fucking philosophical.
Oh yeah,
okay?
exactly. He wants the real truth, and he got a
what happened to my
philosophical
dad?
answer.
Well,
Yeah.
I chopped his legs off, and he was like, last I saw him, he was getting fucking oven roasted with some
Yeah,
magma.
I left him for barbecue.
Invincible!
I left him for barbecue, and you know it cost him an arm and a leg, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But basically, so anyways, he gives him that little lie because he doesn't want to tell him he barbecued his father. So anyways, he gives him a lightsaber, and he almost kills himself, but he doesn't. And of course, they end up seeing that sand people were shooting at what Jawas sold R2 and C-3PO, and old Ben's like, no, it wasn't Jawas. We meant to think it was, because they're too accurate and precise, which is like the only time in the entire movie where stormtroopers are accurate and precise.
That made
Well-
me, and I watched this with my family, we all cracked up when he said
Exactly,
like,
because
he
they
was
miss
talking
they
about the
miss
precision aiming.
they miss every other time.
Well,
yeah.
also said Ben also said, "Hey, these tracks are side by side, where
and saying people only travel single file to hide the
Right.
numbers. Yes.
Right.
And
one of
that's when
those?
Luke says, "Oh no! If they track them here, that'll lead them back home." And he runs home just to see everything burnt in flames and the
I love
charred
that fucking charred corpse that's out
corpse
there.
of his uncle and
Yeah,
aunt.
man.
well, there's a few corpses. Yep.
Yeah, it was so well done. It was very dark especially for a 4-year-old to see.
Right.
You know,
They take it to the serious shit at just the perfect moment too, because you are sort of starting to get like wily old fucking desert creep vibes from Alec Guinness for a minute there, where he's like, "I sometimes take off my robes and bound to and fro on the sand dunes," you know. Like,
Okay. Yeah. I guess.
he's got a bit of that where it's like he's me kind of a thing going on at the beginning. And then he just takes his kids to his house and just gives them weapons. I mean, it's like, you know, I think if they had meandered too much there, he would have started to seem a little bit more comical and sweet than, you know, formidable or whatever.
It's funny you say that, because like this was at near the end of Alec Guinness's career. It was a blatant paycheck role for him, and while he did a great job,
Yeah, he didn't like it.
He was open that he did not give two shits about this movie. But you know, you mentioned that, and it just got me thinking, like, if this had been made, or let's say they had tried to bottle lightning a second time, and for the prequel series, let's say the wise old desert sage was played by Marlon Brando, it would have been the exact same thing, only he probably would have done exactly what you described. In fact, he probably would have done it after being told repeatedly not to.
Yeah, it'd be like some Island of Dr. Moreau shit where he starts believing he's the character and it just goes off the rails with Val Kilmer for some reason doing cocaine. Like, it's just
right.
Fuck yeah. We never would have got the movie that we deserved, but the behind the scenes documentary would have been sick.
One of his last films, The Score, he supposedly refused to wear pants for most of the movie. So I don't know.
That's one of the best things I've ever heard.
All right.
I'll say this. There's a reason why I chose Obi-Wan for my icon. Whatever Guinness may have thought about the role, whatever he may have thought about the movie, he does bring it because he was a professional actor. And it's like I said, I read this blurb where like Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill would be goofing off and cutting all kinds of crazy stuff when they were alone. But when Guinness was on set, they snapped too. They would behave.
There's some feedback going on
because he wouldn't tolerate that. And he does do a good job, and he's very likable in the role. It's very likable performance, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean you know, he's of that old school kind of like a motherfucker. He plays Count Dooku in like a bunch of Hammer Draculas. Christopher Lee. Yeah, like, you know how many pieces of shit I've seen that guy deliver like a AAA performance in?
But Lee, I think, was more open to doing, shall we say, less artsy stuff.
Yeah, schlock is what we like to call it. But I think that's what Alec Guinness thought he was doing when he was doing this, was some just real Z-level schlock shit or whatever. But he didn't see the whole rest of the movie, I don't think. You know, I mean, this has to be put together to know what it's going to be, you know.
A lot of people didn't know what was happening until it was done. You know, most people didn't.
Yeah, I bet you he would have been on top of his game if he could have somehow been back for, you know, Empire in a larger role. But I don't know, man. I mean, he's like that element of it that even
originally
if this movie
he was
was
supposed
like
to be in Empire, and they changed it.
Well, my point is that he's like that element of the movie, I guess, along with Harrison Ford, where even if this did turn out to be some Z-grade schlock at the end of the day, it'd probably still be worth watching for their performances. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. But to point out the fact that you were saying how much Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill were goofing around, Carrie Fisher as well.
Oh yeah.
It was the three of them, and definitely even when Harrison Ford was around, the two of them were up to very mischief. They were definitely kind of like
dude, yeah.
almost
Carrie
brother and
Fisher has
sister
always
in real life.
hardcore
You know?
had that like babysitter that would let you try weed vibes.
Now I have heard. Now I don't know if this is true or not. I have heard that Carrie Fisher had an affair with Harrison Ford, who was married at the time.
Dude, I feel like young people on sets like this, I mean, they probably all got up to some mischief together at some point or another.
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely. I mean, they. I mean, that's why Mark Hamill was so. I mean, a lot of people felt the loss of Carrie Fisher, but I think Mark Hamill was probably besides family. He was just. I mean, she was his sister, even not by blood, but she was his sister. So it really affected him so much too.
Right.
You could tell how much it affected him. But anyways, let's go back to the story. Sorry, guys, I got booted, and StreamYard didn't want to let me back in, so I had to use a different device. Anyways, so he finds the corpse of his uncle and aunt, and realizes old Ben had already told me you need to come with me, and he had declined because he talked like his uncle, and now he's like, well, there's nothing keeping him here now, and old Ben's like, we're gonna have to sell your speeder. He's like, okay, I'm never coming back here again. Of course, he's not. He's not looking into the future because he does come back. But anyways, so they go to Moss Isley, and this is the worst scum in the world are in the cantina here, and they go inside, and Oben immediately goes over to Chewie, who brings him over to Behan. And Luke is told, we don't serve their kind here. He's like, excuse me? He's like, you're droids. They can't be in here. So he's like, we don't want any trouble. God's way outside. And of course, Luke goes to sit down and immediately gets told, hey, my friend doesn't like you. And then he's like, hey, I don't like you either. You better be careful. I'm wanted in, I forgot how many star systems he said, but, he's like, I'll be careful. And then he's like, you'll be dead. And he turns Luke around. And of course, that's when old Ben just chops the arm off of the one that wasn't saying anything. And then kills the other guy. And then, just puts his lightsaber back away. And everyone's like looking. And then they turn back to their drinks like, okay, commotion's over. It's not that big of a deal. Shit like that happens all the time. At least that's the way they acted upon, which is pretty funny. Now, I've seen some memes I just want to point out where they're saying, we don't know that the other guy was really had an issue with Luke. They were saying that, he could have just been saying, hey, what's going on? I'm just here trying to have a drink here. And all of a sudden he gets his arm chopped off. It's pretty funny because we don't really know what he says. They never put it in subtitles or anything. We just got to take it as the word for the other jerk that he was talking for his friend. It's kind of funny. But yeah, people they like to chop people's arms off in the Star Wars movies, or creatures' arms off, and main characters' hands. But anyways, so then we see Luke meet Han Solo and Chewie, and they're going over how much money it's going to cost, and Luke's like, we could almost buy a ship for that price, and then he's like, well, who's going to fly it? You, and he's like, I'm not so bad myself, and pilot myself, and old Ben's like, be quiet, Luke, with his hand gesture. And it's like, we'll pay you 2,000 now, which is what they got for the speeder bike, for the speeder, and we'll pay you another 15,000 when we reach Alderaan. And Hand's like, 17,000. That's like way more than he was asking for. So he's like, okay, you got yourself a ship. And they said being Docking Bay 94. And probably tells them the time. We don't really hear that, or at least I didn't hear it. And then we kind of see him about to leave, and Greedo comes and sits down and starts talking to him. Where Jabba's been looking for him. He's like, I'm just supposed to go pay Jabba. He's like, too late now. He's like, but I've got the money. He's like, well, give me the money and I'll forget to see you. He's like, well, I don't have it on me. And then of course this is where Han shoots Greedo before Greedo has a chance to shoot at him, and Greedo completely misses because he was shot. In the new version, they have Greedo shooting first and misses, and then Han shooting him afterwards, which is totally horrible. But just wanted to point that out. Then, of course, we see Han talking to Jabba, which was an added scene. And Jabba's telling him basically he'll give him 15% more than the original bounty. He tells Jabba not to be greedy, and then Jabba agrees. And he's like, but if you tell me now, there's nowhere in the solar system you can go that and hide without bounty hunters finding you. And Han says, thank you, Jabba. You're a wonderful human being. Of course, Jabba is completely not a human, so I think he meant it as an insult. It was pretty
Well,
funny.
he was originally a human dude with like barbarian furs and just like a big fat guy or whatever.
Where
and
did you
then
hear
they
that?
CG order. There's footage exists, but
Oh, the person, but Jabba's species wasn't human.
I don't know. I'd take that with a grain of salt. I mean, they shot it with the intent to include it in the film, I think, originally.
I'm glad they changed it because it was it's like the way
It's
they
more
did
in
it.
line with what we know from later, but yeah.
So anyways, and he also steps on him at one point where he's talking to him, and Jabba makes this like kind of like face. It kind of looks like a plushie, like when you step on a plushie toy. Only he's a giant one. It was pretty damn funny. So that was just a little humor George added later as well. It's, like I said, I liked. Then of course Luke sees the ship, and they go in there, and another added scene where you see this bounty hunter like guy see the droids and Luke and everyone, and he's like tells the Empire. Of course, I did skip the part where they first got there, and Stormtroopers stopped them, and Ben
The
used the
iconic.
Force to
These are not the
these are
droids
not
you're
the droids you're
looking
looking for.
for.
And I can't believe I skipped that scene, but yeah, these are not the droids you're looking for. And then Luke's like, I can't believe we got past that and thought we were dead. And Ben's like, basically, weak-minded is weak to the Force. And
in the specialized ones, don't they add like a scene where a speeder scares like a big pack animal and it rears up or whatever, and it's like, all right.
Yeah, they were just adding a little more
Mind-blowing.
to the story.
Does it though?
More to the back scene, I guess. Again, it's not needed, but it was interesting to point out. So, anyways, Luke sees the ship for the first time. He's like, "What a piece of junk!" As everybody says when they first see the Falcon. And the Hand's like, it may not look like much, but where it comes, I made a lot of special modifications myself. And it says we'll get you where you're going, and basically saying it's the fastest ship. And of course, he was telling Ben when Ben was like, he hadn't said he never heard of it, which I think Ben had heard of it. He was just haggling. It really sounded like he was just haggling because well, you should have heard of it, just because.
Yeah, what's funny is Luke calls it a piece of junk, and Leia later is like, "Oh, you're coming and saving me in that? You're better than I thought."
Actually, she says, "You came in that. You're braver than I thought," and that is another great line. That's what she said.
Dude, the Millennium. Go ahead, Jake.
A pretty famous meme, I know.
Yes, exactly. I've seen it too. You came to that thing braver than I thought.
The Millennium Falcon might be my favorite character in all of Star Wars. If I
It's not my favorite
like
character, but it's definitely a great character.
It's a character in itself.
I agree. It is a character. It is a character.
It is an amazing ship, but
Definitely
I mean,
the
even
best
just the
ship ever.
design of it became iconic instantly. You know how many B-movie posters have spaceships on them that it's just the fucking Millennium Falcon? Dave knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Made its way into all types of art. It's like the perfect sort of rundown classic of a spaceship, I don't know. In my mind, like the Millennium Falcon is right there with like that car from Cobra. You know, if you had like a more beat up version of that car, and people would look at it and be like, "Ah, that ain't shit." But then you really put the pedal to the metal, and it's like that old bird can purr, baby. Look at that.
Although I'm sure flying around the galaxy in an RV wasn't too bad.
Well, no, the whole story of the Falcon is amazing too. How it traded hands so many times because of fucking what's essentially card games and all the cool smuggling
Sabak.
compartments that are built into it, and how just expertly the carry case that was shaped like it housed all your Star Wars toys. I mean, there's something just perfect about the design of the Millennium Falcon to me.
Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely completely amazing. The design of the Falcon, and it's not my favorite character, but yeah, like I said before, if the Millennium Falcon gets destroyed, I'd be just as upset as any humanoid type character being destroyed. Yeah,
Oh,
the
it
Falcon definitely.
happens eventually, but in the books, and it is sad.
Spoiler alert! I have not read that yet, so I'm not
Well,
gotten
you
there.
just kind of know one day they're gonna do it, right?
I think
But
it might get destroyed one day, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't even gotten to the point where Han dies yet, so um, and I assume that Han will die and Leia and eventually Luke too, but I haven't gotten there yet. So close though, probably.
I don't
Oh
know.
yeah,
In the
definitely close.
books, it was a different character, but we'll leave that for you to discover. It's just a great ship, man. I mean, the design of it seems so practical too. Like the way it's like kind of disc shaped, stuff would glance off of it from most angles, and then it's got those gun turrets. Like, I think that there's something about the Falcon that just screams World War II future
Yeah.
tech to me that I love as well. I don't know. I could nerd out about it for ages. I mean,
And going on about the books is there's the YT freighter. That's what it is. Normally wouldn't come with guns. So that was more special modifications that Han added. Like they are just supply ships, cargo ships. They're not
yeah.
supposed to have guns and all this other stuff on there. But he used it to be a smuggler, so he added all this stuff onto it. So
Yeah, and
it's
badass like
definitely completely.
chambers below
There are
most of
some
the
ships that
support
look like the
decks and
Falcon,
shit.
but they're definitely not the Falcon. So you definitely, anyone that knows the Falcon at all can recognize the Falcon. So it's even sometimes in the books he ends up using different ships because of that fact, because everybody knows the Falcon. And he ends up having to use other ships at times. Not, of course he doesn't want to, but because that's his baby.
Falcon's more for those trips where it's like if
It's
you're seen at
definitely,
all,
even
you're
in the books, it
fucked.
seems like
So
he loves the Falcon more than
maneuverability and
Leia.
speed is what is key. Like he uses it for those dangerous missions, those runs where if you're spotted even briefly, you're in trouble.
Oh
So
yeah.
you got to get the fuck out of there quick.
I mean, he's still a great pilot, so no matter what ship he's in, he definitely can usually escape and do things and figure out ways and all. But yeah, he definitely prefers to do it in the Falcon.
And it's crazy how in the movies they do a fair job of like hyping the ship. So like even for people that like just the movies, the ship is iconic.
Oh yeah.
Then once you get
I
into
agree.
reading the books and stuff, the Falcon takes on like mythic proportions.
People were so big on Boba Fett and like from the movies, he was like really nothing that big of a deal to me. The Falcon was way bigger of a character than he was, and
yeah, deservedly so. It's a cool spaceship. I mean, there's few other ships in sci-fi that are as iconic and popular for the right reasons as the Falcon. Maybe the USS Enterprise, but that's a different type of a thing in terms of like more smaller scale personal vessels. I mean, what is there? There's really no other spaceship of that size that's that popular and iconic.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the Enterprise is way bigger than the.
That's like saying like
thousands of people.
Yeah, that's to me that takes on a different scale of shit. That's
I mean,
like
they both do have the spherical shape though, and at least part of it. So that's the cool thing between the two, I guess.
Yeah, isn't like the Millennium Falcon versus like the Enterprise something along the lines of like a van versus like an RV?
Even bigger. The Enterprise cruised
Yeah,
like
the Enterprise
400
would be
people,
like
even the original one, I think.
would be
So
like one of those what do you call those huge airplanes or like
it's
they
like
aren't they're like
a
cargo
speedboat
airplanes.
versus an aircraft carrier
Like
or
one of those
something.
cargo airplanes versus
Yeah,
like
that's a better one. I was trying to think in more terms of cars, but you nailed it with the aircraft carrier thing better than me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's
was-
like, probably comparable in size in a lot of ways to, the Falcon versus like a Star
or
Destroyer.
a monkey versus Godzilla.
And when you, I mean, it's interesting thought because I've never really tried to think of other individual spacecraft. I mean, maybe Spike's Swordfish and Cowboy Bebop is the only other like personal space. Luke's X-wing, I guess, but that's kind of adjacent, not really the same thing. There's a billion
Well, Boba
X-wings.
Fett's Slave One. I actually like Slave One better than I
There
like
you go.
Boba
Slave
Fett.
One's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually
But
like the ship better
again,
than
that's
him.
adjacent to the Falcon, really, because it's the top tier beast, and I guess Star Wars in general kind of has generated the iconic personal ships.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
it's like,
Lando's
yeah,
ship,
what is it?
Lady Luck.
Yeah, like there's no iconic ship in Babylon 5. Babylon 5, the space station
Yeah, there's some
itself
awesome
is the
ships,
There
but
is
thing.
there's
iconic
nothing
ship,
that stands
Farscape.
out.
Farscape, yeah, it doesn't really have any iconic ships. I mean, it's sort of the same. They just do the Luke's X-wing thing with Aaron's Raider or whatever.
You
But
wouldn't
it's just
say-
what's up?
I'm sorry. I don't know that I heard everyone that was mentioned, but I heard you mention Bebop, and I would say the Bebop itself, but also the Swordfish. But y'all wouldn't say the Enterprise is an iconic ship? I didn't hear that. Or
Yeah, but it's akin to like Babylon 5, the space station, or Moya and Farscape, or like those big ships that it's not quite the same thing.
so you're saying on a smaller scale. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was other ships like
Still the
the
Bebop.
Enterprise, but the Enterprise was still a little unique, even towards the other ships that were like it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Depends on the version, but yeah, I mean, they're all special. The coolest part of the Enterprise is that the clunky bottom part detaches.
That's the coolest
and
part
It
of Star
becomes an
Trek
awesome
is
flying
the
saucer.
Enterprise. Actually, I was never a huge Star Trek fan when I was a kid, but I liked the Enterprise. It was a cool ship.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's go back on topic.
Anyway, they get the fuck out of there in the Millennium Falcon, and they're in space.
Yeah, they're in space and they get shot. They're getting shot at, and they go to where Alderaan is supposed to be, and there's just a bunch of rocks. And at first he thought maybe his calculations were wrong, and then he realizes no, this is it, and there's just no planet. And of course, right before that, Ben had felt something and said it was as if a million voices screamed out all at once and was suddenly
So
silenced.
fucking metal, dude.
Which was just an awesome scene. And he says this to Luke, and then we end up finding out, Alderaan was blown up, and then they find out that there was a short range fighter, fallen TIE fighter, and they're like, looks like it followed us, and they couldn't have followed us, they don't have long range, and Ben's like, no, that's local. He knows the local ship, and they're like, but there's no space station around there, and then we get the famous scene. That's no moon.
Well, I think we skipped over the part where they blow fucking Alderaan out of the sky too. Moff Tarkin
that's
is
what
just like
I kind of mentioned. Yeah, okay. So the
Yeah,
scene was
kind of important.
Leia tries to say that Dantooine is where the rebels are
poor
hiding.
Dantooine too. What did they
And
do? There's probably like one hermit over there.
Tarkin's
Like, what the fuck?
You're far too trusting. I'm still gonna blow up Alderaan. Basically, they blow up Alderaan, and she's like, "Stop! Wait, we have no military." And like, it really mattered even if they had military. They just get blown the frick up.
No
and
to give.
Basically-
Tarkin just does not give two shits at all. He's an evil son of a bitch. So they blow up Alderaan. Old Ben
What's that,
kind of
Jake?
feels it.
Oh, I was agreeing he was an evil son of a bitch. But yeah, Tarkin basically is like, Vader's method. He's like, your methods aren't working. We're going to try an alternate method. And it's like,
Okay, I did skip over the awesome,
Yeah.
horrible part I thought was horrible in the movie. That droid.
that droid just makes me laugh every time. The torture droid when
I
it
think the
comes
torture
after her,
droid is scary still,
it's
but
just so funny. Even when I mean, I don't know if I really did laugh when I was 4, but I know I was very young when I started laughing at that scene. So it was never scary to me. That I know not, I wasn't
You
scared
talking
of it
about
when I
that
was 4.
leather-bound thing? I
It
saw
definitely
it.
seemed
Like,
very, very, very Spock on that scene. I've always felt that way about that scene. That it was just kind of funny the way that torture droid. But anyways, so
Grand Moff Tarkin is important though because they set up a
yeah.
secondary villain in the film to
oh
Vader
yeah,
that is in many ways more terrifying.
and of course he's holding Vader's leash because another part that I mentioned is that they were talking about the rebels are could have figured out a flaw and the other guy's like, oh, this is the big greatest technological terror in the universe, and Vader reminds him that the Force is more powerful, and he's like, well, your ancient
Yeah.
Religion.
devotion to your ancient religion hasn't let you conjure up the plans or this or that, basically berating Vader, and Vader's like, yeah, I ain't taking this, and
Well,
starts
no,
force
no.
choking him until
Vader
Tarkin tells him to stop.
Vader has one of the great lines there. Your lack of faith is disturbing.
Yes, your lack of faith is disturbing. Definitely
But
awesome.
I was going to mention that earlier when you were talking about he was using the Force rather than his own brawn. Like
Yeah.
there, I like that scene because he was very specifically making a point. The guy is saying, like, I was kind of thinking of like another movie that parodied, actually very specifically parodied Vader's meeting with Kenobi in Hot Shots Part 2, where he's like, "Your powers are weak, old man. You should not have come." And
Right.
I kind of feel like this guy could say the same thing. Your powers are weak, old man. And Vader's basically like,
Yeah.
will you say?
I agree, and they actually kind of, they don't really parody, but they kind of mirror it in Rogue One, where Vader is like saying to Krennic, Krennic's like, you talked to the Palpatine about me, that basically wants credit, and Vader just starts force choking him, and he's like, careful you don't choke on your aspirations as he force chokes him. I thought it was pretty funny, and kind of mirrored that scene right there. But
Tarkin raises the stakes a lot though, because
Yeah.
even Vader, as choky as he is, he's going around wringing some necks. That's pretty sweet. But he's obviously a little more measured in his fucking approach than this madman who's willing to just blow whole planets.
Yeah,
out
I
of
know
the
that.
sky,
Right there when Tarkin's like, stop choking him. You think that he's more
Right.
put together, more well controlled, and then he goes and just destroys billions.
Just for
on a whim.
BFD, shits and giggles, just
On a
blows the
whim,
fucking
just
planet
because
out
he
of the
can.
sky.
Because
funny thing
Dantooine is too far away to make an example and to show fear in the entire galaxy. So we're gonna destroy your whole planet.
Doesn't he kind of say it too? Like, this is a good
Yeah.
opportunity to test the fucking
Exactly.
weapon.
Right.
Exactly. So it didn't matter if she had given up the real rebel faith or not. He was going to destroy Alderaan.
Right. And it's a good example of or a moment to mention as well that I was reading. Supposedly, in actual life, Carrie Fisher and Alan Cushing, Peter Cushing, sorry,
Peter Cushing.
they got along swimmingly, and supposedly they got along so well. She had difficulty hating him as much as Leia was supposed to hate Tarkin when the cameras rolled. But I did want to also real
I
quick.
can believe that.
I had a thought, like I wasn't able to really establish a continual train of thought in the opening. But one thing I did want to mention, I just mentioned Hot Shots Purdue, and of course we covered Spaceballs a while back. I actually did grow up with those two, so I grew up with the Star Wars parodies. So it was one of the reasons that when I finally did get around to watching it, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I know this. And I think I've said before about when I watched Casablanca, I had a huge sense of deja vu. I think that's probably true of this series too. Like the idea, because you've seen it all and you've heard it all.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Well, and again, some of the lines, like I would just say, I find your lack of faith disturbing, and that's not a moon. And I don't know if we mentioned it when it happened. I may have been zoned out at that moment. But did we talk about the these are not the droids you're looking
Yes,
for?
I kind of did it quite a little slightly out of
Yes.
out of sequence, but I did go back to it
Right.
because it's a very important scene.
Very
I'm just trying to
famous
move
line.
this along, so
Very famous line.
just kind of skip it around a little bit, but
Yes.
not trying to skip any scene. But it is already 11 o'clock, so
Right.
trying to move it along.
I've been trying to say some of those books I had for Star Wars when I was younger, they were they were like POV stories of it was like what was in like Leia's head during A New Hope, and what was A New Hope like from Han Solo's perspective.
Right.
And in the Leia one for this scene, she was really conflicted because it's like she can't tell them where the base is, but she has to say something to make them stop. So she gives them the name of where their last base was, and it doesn't work, of course. But it was just kind of like where the character was coming from, and I felt that those were fun things to read up on.
Yeah, I always feel a little bad for the people at Dantooine, though, because
well, nobody's on Dantooine. That's the point.
Yeah,
there has to be someone there. If the rebels were there, other people can get there. There's
well, I don't
like
think that there
one
might. I
hermit
think there was other
fishing for
creatures
trout.
there. There weren't. There were all alien types there, maybe, but yeah. But they ended up finding out that she was lying, anyways. Just
We
like
don't
he
know
was
that they
lying,
blow up
and she
Dantooine on
was
like
too
a side
trusting,
mission.
so wasn't he. And Vader knew it. Vader's like, she never purposely give up the rebellion for anything. But anyway, before that, we old Ben's like, okay, Han Solo's like, we're not gonna be able to escape, and Ben's like, there's different ways to fight, and basically he comes up with the idea that they kind of go with the flow, and he knew it was a smuggler ship, so he figured there was probably a way to hide them, and of course, Han Solo, he's like, when I installed these, I never thought I'd be smuggling myself, because Luke says it's handy that you have these because he's so naive. And they hide themselves in there, and of course the ship comes in through the tractor beam, and the stormtroopers go in and comb the inside, and they end up
And we're
getting
missing
two
the part though
stormtroopers
where they're en route, and we get the whole doesn't he play chess with the Wookiee? And then Luke is like training with the helmet or whatever, and they're trying to explain the Force.
Let the Wookiee win.
My favorite part though is whenever Han's like, they're explaining the Force, and he's like basically just tells them that's a bunch of bullshit. I'll just shoot stuff.
Yeah, he believes in luck, and basically he's like, I don't believe in the Force. Nothing controls his life. And old Ben's, and then he's like, I believe, I've got my own luck. And old Ben's like, I don't believe in luck. So they're both definitely completely different sides of the coin. Han Solo completely believes in luck, and old Ben believes in the Force. It is interesting to note later that Han Solo starts to believe in the Force, even as much as he doesn't believe in it in the beginning. But yeah, right. It's definitely a great scene. I didn't mean to skip it, but like I said, I'm just trying to hurry along.
We're good, man. I think we're about to the end of this thing.
Man. Some of us have to go to bed.
All of us have to go to bed. I mean, I work full-time jobs, bro.
I do too.
All right.
I work from morning to night.
Anyways. So they're brought into the fucking Death Star on a tractor beam. There is no moon.
Like I said, they were brought in by tractor beam, and then they got two stormtroopers to come up afterwards, and they took their place. Knocked them out, I guess. They didn't really show that, but they come down into the stormtroopers, and they have Chewie with them and the droids, and they take over the first booth. and take those people out, and Oban's like, I have to, I'll take care of the tractor beam, and Han's like, I knew you were gonna say something crazy like that, and he just basically tells Luke, you're on a different path, and the Force will always be with you, and Oban leaves them, and Han's like, I can't just sit, I don't want to just sit around here and wait, rather go in full force, and that's when R2 and C3PO are basically saying she's here. I don't believe it. And he's like, oh, who's here? So some high-ranking person on our last ship, and like the girl from the message, and Luke immediately wants to go rescue her in the detention center because she's scheduled to be killed. And Han's like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't. Let's just wait here. Like your man says, he's like, wait a minute ago, you wanted to go rushing. Like, not my idea to go running into the detention area. And he's like, but they're gonna kill her, better her than me. Again, showing that he's not really a good guy. He's just out for himself. He's smart. He's neutral. And she's like, well, Luke's like, well, he's rich. And Nan's like, well, how rich? Well, more than you can imagine. I don't know. I can imagine quite a lot. Another great banter. And Luke comes up with an idea, and he grabs some shackles to put on Chewie. And of course, Chewie doesn't like that. And then Luke hands you put these on there, and Han's like, okay, I think I got the idea. And he's like, come on, Chewie, and he puts it on there. And of course, they tell the droids to stay there. And what are we supposed to do? Like, lock the door and hope they don't have blasters.
Again, all the dialogue in this is so memorable.
Exactly.
I do want to add, speaking of those little POV books from Scholastic in like the 90s, the Leia one does cover a little bit of a issue that some people have with this movie, in that at one point she's able to sneak out of her cell, and she's like, I'll create a distraction by releasing the other prisoners. And the Death Star is so new, she's the only person in the detention block.
What?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
So that doesn't, because they were transferring Chewie from another detention is what the whole plan was. Because
they were getting their first new prisoner, dude. That's just something
they were
came up with.
transferring him. He was already there. Like Wookiees were slaves, so it wasn't.
Yeah, I'm aware of all that, but
there might be more than one prisoner block. But the hallway that Leia was in was, according to that little book, was empty.
Don't they just on the fly come up with the idea to put the fucking handcuffs on Chewie? It's
Luke did.
Yeah, so it's these. Dude, we're assuming here that they've got full detention blocks, but it does make sense that she might have been the only prisoner on the actual Death Star because they were building it like in secret. It wasn't exactly a focal point for their prisoner shipments or whatever. But on the same hand, some dude that's just running the detention block doesn't know everything that's going on in a moon-sized space base. Maybe they captured a Wookiee, I guess.
They followed orders when they got there. He's like, well, let me check on this. And
maybe, but they also weren't checking on space pods getting launched to planets from ships they were boarding.
Exactly. So they
there's some kinks.
I'll have to clear it. Like, I wasn't told about this.
Yeah. Well, okay. It also does stand to reason that they did bring the Falcon in on the tractor beam, so maybe they knew there was an incoming ship, and it would stand to reason then that maybe they thought
that they would have prisoners.
Coming from that ship
because they didn't know the prisoners weren't found. Yeah. So
I love the whole infiltration sequence. There's a lot of comedy value to a lot of it. There's the Han on the intercom to the people trying to sound
he's trying to talk, and he's like, and he just shoots it, and he's like, boring conversation anyways. Look, we're gonna have company.
Yeah, we get some great droid stuff. Once they rescue Princess Leia, obviously we get the amazing.
You're too short for a stormtrooper, huh? Oh, the outfit. I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here with Ben Kenobi.
Yeah. And then, obviously we go into the trash compactor shit, and that's just glorious. That's...
And Luke. Of course, Chewie doesn't want to go in. He's like, I don't care what you smell. And, of course, Han turns around and says, what a wonderful smell you discovered to Leia, because it was her idea to go down there. And, then, of course, then we get the scene with the trash compactor, and C3PO going, I don't know where they are, and R2 finally saying, well, why don't you check your recorder? And he's like, oh, I forgot I had it. It was in his hand the whole time. And then he finally connects with them, and they're like, shut down the.
Well, I mean, let's discuss the scene for a minute, though.
Yeah,
The fucking them being in that trash compactor with that creature, hands down, is like.
I got a bad feeling about this too, as well in that scene.
Yeah, that trash compactor shit cannot be understated here. That I think scared a lot of us when we were kids.
It's great. Now we have another scene that I don't know
one
why
of the chief things I'm sure that's responsible for my fear of like any water that I can't see the bottom of. I won't fuck with it. Like I'm not getting in it voluntarily.
Right.
If it's not like a swimming pool or like a crystal clear stream or something that I can see the bottom of.
Man, the Dianoga is creepy.
I mentioned yesterday that underwater creature was creepy to me when I was a kid.
Dude, I still fucking pictured it on the odd occasion that I take a bath. There's like, you know, I think that's one of those movie scenes that flashes in my head. You
know? I'd already seen the horror movies, so
like I have some Star Wars creature books that show you what it looks like besides just the eye and the one tentacle.
Yeah,
it's basically like a rough looking octopus, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's got a creepy.
They did a great job.
Yeah, regular octopus are scary, you know. So like some space octopus in a trash compactor is like with a tentacle eye is way scary. I mean, I don't want to fuck with any part of that.
Yeah.
There's a line here that I don't know why I didn't pick up before, but Han says to Leia, "Get on top of it," and she's like, "I'm trying." And I just laugh because that's definitely another sexual innuendo, like the fun of the movie.
Dude, when that thing is closing on them, that's also fucking super
it is
nerve-wracking. I mean, it's right there with like that Temple of Doom fucking crush trap that they get caught in.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then I love how when they're celebrating and C3PO thinks they're screaming, they go, "No,
yeah.
Curse my soul circus is screaming, I'm too late, and then they're like, we're okay, and then like open the door and they tell them the tension level, and R2 opens it and lets them out, and they're happy they're there, and of course now they're trying to escape, and Han decides he's gonna go running head first towards a bunch of stormtroopers who for some reason suddenly ran, even though it was only Han and Chewie running at them. And then all of a sudden there's like a million more. Okay, not a million, but there's tons more. And then Han turns around, starts running the other way, and Luke's like, well, he sure is brave, and like well, what could that do us if he gets himself killed? And of course, not really caring for Han at that point. He's the pilot, and of course they all have their own way, and they go towards the door, and they end up shooting. He shoots the thing so the door shuts, and of course she's like, put the bridge controls. He's like, oh, I think I just shot him, which he had. So then it led to one of my favorite scenes when they go on the he throws like this rope across, and then she kisses him on the cheek, and he says for luck, and they swing across like Tarzan and Jane style, and they take out the stormtroopers first and then swing across. I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it's like classic adventure shit, man.
Yeah, it is so great. And of course, Darth Vader knows that Obi-Wan's bored. He goes, I sent him.
There was a little playset for that in the 90s that Kenner put out with like Luke, Leia, and like the little grappling hook. You could basically just have them swing like back and forth over the pit, and it was like it's cool, but it's kind of silly in retrospect.
Wow, a lot of imagination had to come into it with stuff like that.
That's how
I'd probably have like a
really.
Rancor in there under him or something.
Kind of like looking back on that, it's like
Hey, I had the Ewok village, and that wasn't really much.
I'm built for the Ewok village. That sounds pretty cool.
And I had Jabba's
this whole sequence in the Death Star with them rescuing Leia is really Like, to me, the movie kind of has the opening chunk of it where you get a lot of cool stuff, right? But then, like, the main chunk of it is right here with all of this shit
I was
in the
just about to
Death
say
Star.
too. The Death Star escape is a lot of this movie.
Yeah, and then you get the
almost feels
finale
like
with
it's
the dog
it's a
fights and shit.
climax. Only it's not. It is still leading to the climax, but it's so epic that it feels like it's almost climactic. It's almost like you can forget what happened afterwards, even though his Death Star gets destroyed after that. You know, something major happens, but it was such an iconic scene, and it's so well done that it's just
Yeah, this is where the bulk of the fun in this thing
Yes,
happens.
I
is
agree.
like in this whole sequence, and then, you know, like you said, you kind of feel the movie almost could end after they rescue Leia,
Yeah, and
if
the
they really
second-
wanted it to. But the fact that it has like the dual climax with the whole final fucking dogfight
which is
battle,
only a climax to the scene, not even to the movie. That's
yeah,
why, you know,
it's-
for years I kept thinking that Star Wars was 3 hours long because
well,
so
we'll
much
get
happened.
to that final
It
scene. I have my
feels
thoughts
longer.
on that.
It feels not because it drags, it just because so much happens. That it feels like it's a long movie. But yeah, so you know, Darth Vader says to Tarkin that Obi-Wan's there and he knows he feels him and he must face him and face him on. So you know he goes out towards Ben. Ben, of course, gets rid of the tractor beam like he says. And of course he knows he has to face Vader too.
I always like that fucking sound when he's powering it down.
Yeah, it's
Like
great.
no one's gonna notice that, you know. Any of these patrolling girls, like, I
Yeah,
don't
the
think that
stormtroopers
that's
are
the
like
sound you
right
want to hear
there.
in a space station. You know?
They're right there, and they're not gonna notice that loud ass noise.
That's not a good sound.
It's not, you know. I think we should at
Maybe
least
they went
tell
on their coffee
someone.
break.
Yeah.
But
I'm surprised they didn't say another one. You know.
yeah, who knows? But and of course we get the scene where they're meeting back up together to go to the ship, and then Luke sees Vader and Obi-Wan, and of course Obi-Wan looks and he knows this is where he pulls a little trick where he's like he's gonna let Vader just kill him because he feels he's gonna be stronger in the Force in guiding Luke through the Force than physically, and giving Luke a good reason to hate the Empire if he already didn't have more of a reason, you know, like
I
killing
guess.
his family and everything. So Ben,
The
you know,
older I get, the goofier the Ben sacrifices to me in
oh,
this
I
movie.
get it, I agree, but
I'm just gonna throw the fight because why
so
not?
Vader,
You know?
well, you know, Obi-Wan didn't have the high ground, so he's gonna lose anyways.
Maybe.
So anyways, Vader's like, now I have the high ground because he's like taller. But anyways, Vader cuts down Obi-Wan because Obi-Wan just doesn't even just lifts up his sword, like lets it happen, his lightsaber. And Luke's like, no, and he starts running, and the stormtroopers all turn around, and then Leia's like, no, we gotta go. Like it's like, you know, all these people, and Luke shoots the things, stops Vader from coming through, which is pretty cool. And of course they all get on the ship, and R2 and 3PO's running behind, always the last one in. Somehow manage to get on the ship, and they take off, and you know they start fighting the ships, and they're all happy for a minute, and then Leia's happy, and then she's like, she's like, oh, you know, they're tracking us. It's the only reason for the ease of our escape. And Han's like, easy. He's like, yes, you know, which I agree. I mean, they sent a few ships, but compared to what they could have, they made it easy. They did make it easy. So she was right there. Even though it was a great victory, she was right. And of course,
that's our first little introduction to, isn't it, to the dogfight mechanics of the movie.
Yeah. And
As when they're escaping, and Luke and Han have to jump into the thing.
And he's like, I got one. And Han's like, great, kid, don't get cocky. And you know, Han takes out a couple because, you know, he's a, you know, old, you know, at that point, I guess Chewie took over and he's piloting because, you know, Chewie does that. But later on, Leia ends up running
those fucking dogfights.
Was
that first part where they're in those gun bubbles, though, so sick, dude.
They get used a lot in the books.
It really is like a cool bridge to the final battle sequence.
When one of the turrets gets
we finally get to see
one of the bodyguards, Nuggery bodyguards, and that was so sad. I was sad for the Falcon losing his turret as well as the bodyguard.
Right, but I mean, for the sake of this film, that sequence is pretty dope because it,
it's fucking
like I
awesome.
said, kind of bridges the gap to the final thing, and it's our
It,
first
it,
taste
it,
of
it
like
definitely looked like a futuristic video game where
it's our first taste of real space combat.
Yeah, where they were doing
Yeah.
the thing in there in this machine that basically moves them all over the place, and you got to control the way you're moving around, and you got to follow the ship, and there's a lot to it. It's not like jump in shoot, there's a lot to it, and
That's
Luke
how real
picked
dogfights are.
Luke picked it right up on it, probably through the force, and of course already knew he put all that in there, but
I think it was more from him bullseyeing Womp Rats and his T-16
that too. I
or
mean,
whatever,
I think
but
experience and the force is my opinion.
because he hadn't had much force training then
Not a lot, but once it starts opening up,
obviously yes, but
he was strong in the force just like his father. So obviously,
yeah, maybe. It seemed like they were pretty evenly keeled. I don't know. It's just I love it. I mean, they could have easily just had them speed off and get into some regular chase with them, but they decided to throw in the dogfight elements, which really pays off when they get into the whole final climactic sequence that we're about to jump into.
I agree. So we're finally off, and Leia's like, well, it ain't over, and Han's like, it is for me, sister. I ain't in it for your revolution. I'm in it for the money. And he's like, it's like, if money all you want, and that's exactly what you'll get. And she huffs off, and Luke looks at her like, what's wrong with her? And get the little banter between the two where Luke basically is like, you're not interested in her, are you? And he's like, no. And he's like, good. And then he's like, oh, well, what do you think, her and me? And Luke's be like, no, because, obviously he likes Leia in a more personal way. And of course, anybody who's seen the other movies know at this point that who they are together. And you might go, ew. But at this point, the first time you watch it, you don't know who they are. And of course, Luke and Leia don't know themselves. But Luke has the hots for her, and Han jokes around about it. But of course, Han and Leia actually do. I think they like each other right from the beginning. Just between the pure hatred that it seemed like they had for each other immediately was so strong that they had that chemistry together, even though what they said to each other, so it made sense for them to be together. Even if, without knowing the fact that Luke and Leia are related, are brother and sister.
Yeah, I mean, incest is pretty creepy, even in space. So
I agree. But, again, they didn't know, so George Lucas knew, so he kind of was like,
yeah, you dirty little bird, Georgie
exactly.
boy.
Maybe he didn't know, and he just said he knew.
I think there's a lot of that goes on with Star Wars, but there's a lot of fans that will never hear of it.
Well, he put it in there, so he knew eventually, because eventually he put it in there. Doesn't matter when
eventually
he
did it.
He did
but there are some soap opera style twists in Star Wars
he had
like
them
that,
kissed,
and Darth being his dad that I don't know that he had in mind necessarily right out of the gate.
But despite that, so they end up getting back to the real rebel base, and Luke and saying bye. He's getting the money loaded on, and because the rebellion paid him, and he's gotta go pay Jabba. So Luke's all like, oh, he's taking off, and I understand Dan's point. He's got to pay Jabba, Of course, I guess he could have stuck around and then gone and paid Jabba, which he should have done. I don't know why he didn't. In Empire Strikes Back, he should have already paid him by then, but he never did. So anyway, so he seems like he's gonna leave, and Luke's is all upset. Han says, may the Force be with you, even though Luke kind of just looks at him and walks away. Han doesn't believe in it. He knows the kid. Luke does. And then of course we get R2 being fitted into the ship, and Luke's like, you want another astromech droid? It's like, no, in your life, they've been through a lot. C-3PO is telling that to be careful. Then of course,
Biggs, no, I'm sorry, Wedge says, you think you can handle this thing, and that's when Biggs says, oh, he's one of the best pilots he knows back on Tatooine, and then he says, oh, you'll be okay, and Luke goes into the his Red 5 X-wing, and we, of course, they actually showed Mon Mothma was showing that there was a little flaw in the Death Star. There was a tiny little thing they can hit and destroy the whole thing, and by hitting the reactor at a precise spot. And someone says it's impossible, and Luke's like, "Oh, that's not that possible." It's I used to hit Womprats with my T-16 back home. That's not much bigger than 2 centimeters, and Luke's already acting like it's not that big of a deal. So then we get the space battle where they start going towards the Death Star, and of course all the ships come out, and there's awesome battles between the TIE fighters and the ships, and we lose poor Porkins at some point.
Does anybody have any thoughts on the film up to this point, or Dave, Tammy, Dustin, anyone?
Well, the final Death Star trench run is one of the most exciting things I think ever committed to film, and it's such a great sequence.
Certainly one of the most
enjoy. The Death Star itself was made from dozens and dozens of spaceship model kits that were just cannibalized into something that looked like functional and interesting. Like it was like 6 ping pong ball tables full of just stuff randomly put together.
That's not even far off from what it takes to put it together from Legos, so I can believe it.
You cannot tell at all that that's what they did. Like it just looked like it worked. They looked like they fit. Like it's great. And the sequence where Darth Vader like steps in and becomes like the final boss, if you will, of the Death Star trench run.
That part's awesome.
That's pretty great.
I love the whole like as soon as you're thrust into this portion of the movie, it feels like sudden because when you think about this film up to this point, there really hasn't been that many people on screen. It's been like a handful of people, other than like the Mos Eisley Cantina and then the Imperial scenes where it shows all of them. But up to this point, it feels like it's really just Luke and Obi-Wan and Han and Chewie and Leia against this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're thrown into the hustle and bustle of the build up to that fucking Death Star trench run shit, it really like all of a sudden the scope of the movie is widened like 100 times. Like, oh shit, there's this whole other like war machine on the other side of this that now Luke is part of. And it really just it's startling when you watch it how much the scale of the movie jumps up at that point. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, this is where the money went into the film. You can tell that at least when you're a kid, you look at this stuff and you think it's more than Christmas tree lights, So.
Oh yeah, and then from a storytelling point of view too, it's like, oh shit, now he's fully in it at this point. He was just teetering on the edge of this rebellion up to this moment in the movie, and now he's like suiting up and getting into a fucking ship and being ready to be deployed as part of their fighter squadron for this battle with this mammoth space station. And it's just it becomes a grander film real quick, like narratively and obviously with all the budgetary effects stuff like you're talking about, and that can't go without stating.
Yeah,
it's a crazy moment in the movie.
The climax where Han Solo shows up and like rescues Luke from Darth Vader, like that was maybe my favorite scene in the movie for a long time. Because it's just so exciting. It's like, oh, okay, he's almost got it. Oh no, what? It's like, hey, there's Han again. And Darth Vader's like, what? Is almost kind of funny too.
Oh yeah, the whole final battle is amazing. I mean, the effects and the way it is, just all of it is paced perfectly. It's like an exact replica of, like smaller scale dogfights that had been done in earlier World War II films and stuff. There's a really weird early mail-in to Fangoria, which I only know about because I reviewed like the first 6 issues of it a while back. But this dude mails in and he's like, what World War II movies inspired the dogfight scenes in Star Wars? And whoever was responding to the Fangoria mail-ins at the time got like real defensive about it. I like sort of offended that they would assume that the dogfights were inspired by other dogfights in movies. And so they basically acted like it was, obviously the stuff in Star Wars was like ahead of its time and never been done and yada, yada, yada. And it's just funny to see like such a, what do you call it? Like a defensive fan reaction, even in 1979, like movie'd only been out a couple years and people were already like, no way, man, Star Wars did it. Like it couldn't have possibly been influenced by these World War II movies, even though it's clearly like World War II style dogfight type footage,
which Star Wars probably got it from
And
the
actually,
World War II, but yeah.
I read that Lucas, in the run-up to the release of this, actually screened an unfinished cut of the film for some of his filmmaking friends. And apparently Brian De Palma said that was one of the worst films I've ever seen. But, Spielberg had faith in him. But apparently for this cut, Lucas did have footage from older films, including war films, in place of some of the scenes that would later be done with, effects and whatnot. So he probably did have a couple of World War II aerial dogfight scenes in there as placeholders that may have been the models for what ultimately we saw.
Exactly. I mean, and it's just, that poor soul that wrote into Fangoria back in the day just happened to get that dude that was like a Star Wars fanboy that was like basically, fuck you. They didn't take it from anything, And it's like, all right. I mean, it's in my review of it. It's a real awkward exchange between the two, I maybe never wrote into Fangoria again if I got that kind of a response in print in the magazine to my write-in,
Right.
That's neither here nor there, though. The final fucking sequence of this movie is still a cinematic marvel, I think. Every time that I watch the entire Death Star sequence, I'm still in awe.
Because there is a final sequence that comes after that we're going to talk about in a minute.
We will be discussing that, because I have my thoughts on that.
I have opinions, as they say.
But the final battle of this film is fucking magnificent.
Yes.
I think you'd be hard pressed even today in any type of sci-fi to find a better final space battle.
Yeah, I mean the whole them going down the trench and trying to use their missiles to shoot it. They almost hit, and then finally Luke going for his run, and Vader coming after him, and
Dude, the way it was shot, where like
hit his own son before he even realized his own son. Han Solo comes in and clips Vader's wing, not destroying the ship,
and that's pretty funny. And then
he goes spinning off, and
the way they had those in cockpit shots too of the dudes when they would get
you
blown
kind
up
of picture
is fucking something.
You kind of picture Vader going no, and he's spinning away.
Which apparently that ruffled some feathers. People thought that keeping Vader alive was like a plug for a sequel, which it was.
Well, of course it was.
Still, that apparently bothered a lot of people because, sequels still kind of have a bad name.
Sequels still weren't exactly the order of business back then.
Empire Strikes Back ended up being more people's favorites than others. Not mine, but yeah. So,
all right. That aside, though, I really also do love how they have those in cockpit shots of the dudes when they get blown up, and like you actually see the pilots like reacting to getting shot out of fucking the sky.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I don't think I'd ever seen that in a movie, and you still don't really see it too often, I guess.
It lets you know who's being like eliminated from the board.
Yeah.
True.
And then, of course, blowing up the Death Star and all that shit's epic and iconic.
Yep.
And Han Solo coming in and showing that he was loyal at the end was pretty dope. And
loyal, but kind of stupid.
Depends on your point of view, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, to save his own neck, it was uncharacteristically from what we knew of him at that point.
Yeah, but he never met any people like Luke and Leia. And
I know. I'm glad he came back. I mean, I love Han, and I'm glad he came back. But I'm just saying, from his, neutral point of view, it was probably a bad decision.
It's like the perfect finale to a movie. It's fucking epic and action packed and heartfelt and comedic, and I mean, it's got like all that shit all woven into one thing. And then for some reason they decide to sort of ruin it with a scene where they give him medals for some reason.
Really dingy.
I don't think that was ruined. I think what was ruined is they didn't give Chewie one.
No, I think it was ruined because it was so freaking sappy and over the top
and corny.
Corny as shit.
It's dumb as fuck.
They destroyed the Death Star that could blow up.
So did a bunch of other people.
Yeah, but Luke is the one that made the shot, and if it wasn't
doesn't
for him,
matter.
Luke wouldn't have been able to do it.
They could have done the same scene.
It's just like they would do in the military. They don't want to give everyone.
Yeah, it's a little too
medal.
on the nose.
Yeah,
I think they could have done a more cinematic ending to it.
I think also it feels tacked on. It may have been tacked on. It may have been Lucas. I've seen several notes that state that Lucas was less than sure about this movie's prospects. He had the other two films basically plotted out. He was looking forward to doing them, but he didn't really, I think he didn't really truly believe he would get to do them. So
Exactly.
this was kind of an ending that was like,
he wanted to reward the characters.
Clear ending. What's that?
And maybe he wanted to reward the characters or something.
Yeah. He wanted to give them
if you could do another movie, I feel like it was probably meant to like close off. It's like, see, they're gonna be fine,
Yeah.
In the Han Solo like little kid's book I was talking about, there's actually an well, it's in kind of like both the Leia and the Han Solo ones. They kind of coordinated those a little bit. Like there's a scene where Leia has like an argument with Han Solo where she's like, "Come and accept the medal," and he's like, the only ones who deserve medals are the people who died, and that kind of impresses her a little bit. But she also makes the point that well, they can't be here, so why don't you, this is how we're going to honor them. And that changes Han's mind, and he goes through with the ceremony.
That's neat.
But again, they didn't give a medal to Chewie, and Chewie deserved a medal.
I think they
maybe
gave Chewie a medal. They just didn't show him like putting it on.
They never said they never showed it. We never saw it, so
it wasn't one of the. It wasn't one of the.
I've never read the book, so if it did in the book, I don't know.
In one of the Disney things, they're like, yeah, he got a medal too, and I always thought that was the case. Like he got a medal too. He just didn't want them to put it on.
Right.
That was my take on that.
Well, they could have showed them trying to put it on and him growling at them.
I think they could have done a better ending to it, but I think the ending works also in the ways you guys have made some good points on why it still works. But it is corny as fuck. I stand by that.
I agree, it's corny, but I like it. I like corny, so
I think that it probably also helped the movie a little bit, though, coming out in '77. Sort of post-Vietnam era. A lot of dudes didn't get medals coming back from the war. There is maybe there could be something to that of why Star Wars took on with all ages at the time.
And it is worth mentioning that, given the films that were big in the 70s, basically this, I think, was the year after Taxi Driver. It was like it was.
Yeah, nobody's getting a medal ceremony at the end of those movies.
People were ready for counter programming, and this was definitely counter programming to what we've been seeing.
Yeah. So there's something to be said about it in that respect, but I personally always kind of find myself chuckling at it because it's just so goofy.
It's
like
not
I
as
do
out
with
of
the
place-
with the,
it's
with
not
the
as out of place
Pterodroid.
as it would have been at the end of a movie like Taxi Driver.
They should have given
I
that dude the
like
key to the city or something.
I like the ending. It was I liked it, but
Well, I mean, we're allowed to
see your
have
point.
different opinions, but
Yeah.
I mean,
I see your point.
yeah,
But anyways,
it's
I guess let's move on to production.
Okay.
And we'll go around and see what everyone thought of production. Let's go ahead and start with you, Dustin. Go the other way and start with you. What do you think of production?
well, I mean, I guess before we get into that, Dave, Tammy, do you guys have any thoughts on the movie at all?
Well, overall, I guess the final battle was phenomenal. I mean, definitely in the added copy of Star Wars, everything was brighter, everything was sharper. You could definitely see the TIE fighters more clearer. You could see the squadron much more clearer. And I always get a kick out of how the Rebel Alliance gets together, and like all of them get like blown up, and then Luke is the last one, and he's like he's still using his target computer, and you hear, you hear
I feel
Obi-Wan
about that.
voice to him, "Hey, use the Force, Luke." So I get a kick out of how it all plays out, and I think a lot of people enjoy Han Solo coming back and like helping him out with that last shot there, So
Right on. What about you, Tammy? Do you have anything to add about the movie? You haven't got to really say anything.
Not really. I think you guys got said it all. There really isn't much more to fill in.
All right.
So, Dave, what are your thoughts on production?
Well, I thought production, at least for the time. I mean, I remember even the grainy VHS. I mean, some of it was like a little duller than this the first time I watched it. So, everything was pretty damn good. I mean, you've got the different colorings for the different tiers of levels of soldiers, and you definitely know the difference between the bad guys and the good guys, and you got the different weapons that are there. You got the different special effects. Like I seem to remember in the first time that I saw Star Wars, I don't remember R2D2 having that much electricity shot through his little body, but
They probably added more CGI to it.
Yeah, they definitely added more CGI to that. I think there were a lot of cool characters. Like I didn't know that those were Jawas until way after Star Wars, But I always got a kick out of their language, and I always got a kick out of the fact that you had like different.
They remind me of Belly Dwarfs.
I feel like they hardcore ripped off the Jawas for the language of the minions.
I could see that. But Yeah, I mean, the production overall on this was like pretty damn decent. I mean, you got the stuff from the gunfire to the lightsabers. Everyone has a different lightsaber who has one. You know, I mean, I believe it was green for Ben. Ben. It was red for
It's
um
blue in this first one, isn't it?
for Darth Vader, and then blue for um, Luke. But that's because it was a handed down lightsaber. You know, it was his father's. But yeah, I mean, I thought the production is great. I don't think there could be a more perfect Star Wars movie made for that time. You know. And
Yeah, it's all pretty great, man. I mean, miniatures are awesome. All the effects that I can think of that are in the actual version of it are awesome. CGI aside, there's really no complaints on any of that for me. I think they had a good combination of like what later would be. I mean, if you compared what they had to work with miniatures and like sets and things like that on this one to later ones, it's minuscule, but they made the most of it. They had the good combination of like good production value with the stuff they had to fabricate, and then they had like great locations to shoot at as well when they were in the real world, and they did their due diligence building those sets, man. I mean, they're pretty fucking amazing, those interior Death Star sets and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, production quality or production design on this thing was nuts, even for the first movie, and then obviously got crazier as it went on. But for a movie of this caliber for the time, obviously, it's been said that George Lucas pushed a lot of boundaries with this, and it's definitely true.
Yeah, I would say the production overall was pretty solid. Some of the effects did not age well, and I watched it. I think this may have been my first time watching it on Blu-ray. I'm not certain, but I think so. And I feel like that draws into sharper effect some of the
I'll be the first to tell
missed
you
opportunities.
that maybe the fucking VHS for me looks better.
Right.
A happy middle ground is probably like some of the first DVD releases because there was one DVD release.
It looked good on DVD, yeah. I do think that some of the issues with the effects show up more sharply on Blu-ray, unfortunately.
For sure.
But given when it was released, though, the effects are not that bad. And the overall production, the look of the film is pretty solid. It's pretty iconic. Yeah.
It does still hold up today very well. Yeah. Some of the new stuff they added, ironically, doesn't hold up as well. Like the CG
holds up worse than some of
the CG from 1997, like, is very obviously CG, and they haven't really polished it all that well, in my opinion. I mean, I know the other changes to the other films a little bit more. Specifically, Darth Vader shouting "No" at the end of Return of the Jedi, like, just tanks the film for me. So it could be worse with this movie, but the stuff that was added in the special editions, I think, works fine. Like the drive into Mos Eisley, where there's like creatures and stuff there now, instead of just oh yeah, we're pulling in, But visually, like, this movie just still works very well, like even from almost as well as the day it was made, I would think. And with the lower resolution of like home video at the time, I think that helped sell it even better, because you can't see like the wires as much. When the special edition did come out, I remember that there was like an extra tape with a bunch of stuff about here's what we did, and it shows them like removing matte lines and stuff like that so that things blend in a little bit better. And I think those sorts of tweaks were fine, personally.
That stuff's okay. That's like the normal shit that they do when they do like a special edition of a fucking film like this,
Right.
But it's not like they went back and added CGI frogs to fucking Dune, bro. You know, like there's a certain point where it's like, are you kidding?
Dave, were you done with your what you were saying about it?
Yeah, Dave already finished.
Okay.
So did I. So.
Yep.
Tammy.
For the production.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was really good. I mean, it looked believable, especially for that time. Um, I liked all the different critters, as you may say, especially the bar scene. You had quite a few different looking characters in there. You know.
I like those
Yeah.
butt face dudes that are playing the clarinet.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, I like the stuff.
Well, then that real weird looking thing that came up to Luke, you know, I don't like you, or he doesn't like you, but I don't like you either.
Yeah, that guy's greasy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
He's on Panda Baba.
yeah, I mean, you know, I liked the fight scenes were very good, believable, and everything. So, like I said, you know, for its time, I think they did a really good job on everything. You know, so.
Right on. Jacob?
What's up?
Production.
Oh, I already commented on that.
Okay, cool.
Like I said, it's pretty solid. Yeah. But
It's a well-built stovepipe of fucking fantastical visualizations, okay?
right.
I think it worked real well.
And of course, I think first time was absolutely amazing. George didn't need to do anything to it. Maybe what they normally do, putting it into DVD and then Blu-ray. But that aside, I do like what it's been added to. So I mean, he didn't need to. But I'm saying there's you can definitely tell the difference between the original VHS version and newer versions. But still, the production was pretty awesome and cutting edge for its time. So like I said, the only complaint I have is that droid. It just I don't know, just the interrogation droid was just kind of laughable to me.
Well, and see, that's where I would be curious as well, because other people have mentioned how they think certain effects don't hold up so well today, and I mean, just what?
I think they all hold up, with the exception of that.
What I would say for effects that don't hold up are pretty minor, really. Like some of the costumes and puppets for the aliens in Mos Eisley, like if you look really close, you can maybe see like the seams where like the latex was poured out of the mold.
That's fair.
But you have to kind of really look for it. So that's what I would consider some of the effects not holding up. And then, of course, like the 97 CGI, which sticks out extremely poorly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, is I feel like most of the stuff in it that people would say is kind of dated would be more so the stuff that was added to it. The movie has a pretty fun sense of realism when you watch it like despecialized and just its original form. All three of them do. Which is why I've never really understood the addition of the CGI nonsense, because the movies created their own very tangible reality, which led to a lot of books and a lot of fandom for a lot of years, and almost unanimously, most of us prefer the despecialized versions. So I don't understand why George Lucas has been so stubborn about it over the years, but I guess we'll probably never know. He really likes those CGI frogs, I guess. And Greedo shooting first.
Oh yeah, that annoys me too, because when I first saw that, I was like, something feels different about this, but I don't know what. And it was many years later somebody pointed out that they tweaked it so that Han shoots him second, and it's like, what? Oh, that's stupid. Why did they do that? And I still think it's one of the dumber things they've done.
Yeah, he's even trolled people by wearing a T-shirt saying the hand shot first.
It's wild that George Lucas would decide later on to change the entire nature of a character with such a really poorly done edit. When you watch it, it looks goofy.
You're right. I agree.
There was a thread on Twitter I saw the other day talking about how a scene in Solo establishes that Han is the kind of person who does shoot first. And then the comment that the person made was, it's wild that this scene is referencing a version of the character that you can't get legally because they don't sell the unedited one, like where he does shoot.
Yeah,
that's completely unavailable.
It's wild.
Oh, you can get it on eBay if you want to pay a fortune.
You can just get it. The despecialized versions aren't hard to get.
But you can't you can't buy it from Disney, was their point.
Fuck Disney. I need my Star Wars, baby.
I agree. They canceled Mandalorian. Fuck Disney.
I mean, Mandalorian was getting kind of boring. And
probably should have stopped after 2 seasons.
You can go to hell too. Anyone else?
Anyway, what are we on to now? Score?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. John Williams won like 50 Oscars for it or whatever the fuck.
He did win more than one. But yeah, it is definitely an iconic score. You know, you got your main theme and a couple of the others. And actually, I really love the music they play in the Mos Eisley sequence too. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's all awesome. And I'm not going to go over everything that John Williams has done. If you don't know John Williams and his music, shame on you, people.
For some reason, the Mos Eisley music is always what I imagine when people talk about like 70s key parties, like swingers parties, you know?
Right.
It's like that Mos Eisley Cantina music.
Yeah. Either that
in my head.
or the sleazy like the sex type music, you know.
Well, yeah, if it's not porno funk, it's Mos Eisley.
Yeah, it's either porno funk or it's Cantina, Star Wars Cantina.
The most striking moment in Star Wars for me is, and it's for a lot of people, they use it to death in the documentaries about it. It's that moment where like Luke is walking out on the sands of Tatooine or whatever, and he sees the 2 suns setting, and there's like that music hits, you know. Like I feel like every kid, if you grew up with this, especially, but every kid like experiences those moments when you're like 15 and the world starts getting hard and your girlfriend's, you know, left you, and you're like, I feel like Luke on Tatooine right now, you know. I just need to get out of here into the universe. Yeah, it's a powerful moment in cinema, I guess, is that bit of visual with the music, you know.
That is a good panoramic moment.
What did you think of the music, Tammy?
I thought it went with it really good. I'm sorry, I'm not one of. Every time we get to this part, it's like I guess I pay more attention to the movie than I do to the music. So,
though the music is iconic.
To me, the music is just as iconic as the movie. You know much.
To most of us, but I can understand how that can be a struggle for people. What I've found works is maybe Tam next time. Yeah.
Well, of course I know
something
that
might
part.
work for you, Tammy. Is I found success with this with other friends is having them listen to the soundtrack when they're like cleaning house or working or whatever. Like
one soundtrack I would listen to without watching the movie.
Yeah,
hey,
well, I used
to have the vinyl record of Empire Strikes Back. So
it's just the type of thing. Like you know, you might not be able to focus on it when the movie's going on, but if you throw it on when you're doing other stuff, you might find those bits of music. And
to me,
like,
when I hear
music,
I
do like that. You know.
I see the music in my head. I see the movie in my head when I hear the music.
Yeah, but that doesn't work for everyone, bro.
I know.
I
I'm just
probably,
saying what I see.
I probably hear the music when the movie's going on, but I just think of it as part of the movie. I don't really think of it separately. You know.
Right.
Star Wars has influenced so much in culture too. I mean, even on National Lampoon, you get that Chevy Chase on the cover with that New Hope, looking thing. I think in Vacation. So
I think there's those certain things that come every so often where they become as American as baseball and apple pie or whatever they say.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is one of those fucking things. It's like people know who Mickey is, even if they live in like war torn something Slavia. You know what I mean? They know
Superman.
who Darth Vader is. They know who. I mean, it's like exactly Superman, all that kind of shit. Star Wars is one of those rare things that enters popular culture that just becomes part and parcel of all of it. Like, even if you're not into science fiction, if you just get into pop culture stuff on any level, you're going to have interaction with Star Wars people. It's just a fact. It's crazy that all came from this little ode to, like, pulp sci-fi serials of the day from some random California fucking college student, which is really what George Lucas was at the time. Was it like UHF the movie, or not? That's a fucking Weird Al movie. No, maybe that was it. What was the movie that George Lucas made right before this? Wasn't it like some experimental, weird, like
THX
2001 Space Odyssey influenced shit? What?
THX something?
THX, yeah. I mean, this was, just meant to, I think, kind of be what it was. And there's not many movies that you can say that about, but I think Star Wars kind of came into it innocently enough with all those ingredients. And while George Lucas takes the lion's share of credit for all of this, I think Star Wars really is down to like a bunch of people that were involved in it. He does deserve all the credit for what this one was, and he kind of struck the nail right on the head, right out of the gate, So whatever any realist wants to take away from him credit-wise for the rest of the franchise, you gotta give George Lucas his fucking flowers for this first movie, for sure.
I will never take any credit away from George Lucas.
I think he was just selling toys and like really just like greenlighting things after Empire.
Yeah, well, he was still my hero for a long time.
Mine too, in a lot of ways, but so is Vince McMahon. We'll leave it there.
You. I agree. I mean, Vince was my hero for a long time too, but yeah, thankfully not anymore.
Favorite character? If we had to go just based on this first Star Wars movie, I think that's a good place to.
Han Solo.
Yeah, I think for me it'd probably a tie between Han and the princess. I do like Princess Leia a lot in this first movie.
Yeah, I definitely gonna be saying something different than I've ever said my entire life on that. But I'll do mine last. Yeah, let's do favorite people and favorite scenes. So, Mo, did you said your favorite scene?
You first, Jake.
Well, I'm trying to figure out my favorite character based solely off of this one. Maybe I might have to go with Ben Kenobi with R2D2 as a close second. Just because I can't not think of R2D2 constantly cursing the universe even though he may not be. That's the thought that's in my head. Some of the other characters I like too, but they become like Vader becomes an iconic character as the series goes on, but not as much based off of this one.
Right.
Tarkin's almost the better villain here, and he is a good villain.
Yeah, really well, don't
Good
steal
villain,
my
yeah,
choice.
better villain.
As far as the favorite scene, that's actually kind of tricky. I do like that big trench run scene at the end, and of course, the blowing up of the Death Star is an iconic scene. Probably just some of the little moments as we go along, some of the character interactions. We mentioned some of the great lines of dialogue, some of the 3PO digs at R2D2, and a couple of the lines like your lack of faith. Find your lack of faith disturbing, and I'm sure we mentioned at some point. I have a bad feeling about this. I don't remember it being mentioned, but it is mentioned at least once in every movie, and that's kind of just always amuses me because it's part of what makes Star Wars is someone's going to say that.
Right.
So, and then, of course, the music is just phenomenal. So I would say anytime that certain parts of the score start up is always going to be a great moment, too. It's easier to pick least favorites with this one, but I've already mentioned those.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to change my choice to favorite character being Grand Moff motherfucking Tarkin. Dude just blew up a planet. No fucks to give. And then, I don't know, favorite scene, maybe the trash compactor is always what I'll come back to, but that's like childhood trauma shit. So I don't know if that's accurate, but I think maybe my actual favorite scene, dude, it might be that fucking whole scene where like Han is trying to convince those guys over the intercom.
That's a really fun moment too.
I think that whole bit with them in the like control room is great stuff. But yeah, that moment is probably my favorite in the whole movie.
I'd have to say, oh, go ahead.
I was saying, Dave, go ahead. Like,
Oh, okay.
what's your favorite?
I have quite a few favorites. I don't think we really mentioned the scene where Chewbacca was actually playing that the game with 3PO and 3PO.
Actually, Mo mentioned it
briefly,
okay.
But yeah, we were moving at such warp speed that we couldn't really talk about it. But go ahead, Dave.
I think that's one of my favorite moments because he says something to the effect that Wookiees don't like losing. As far as favorite character goes,
no one cares if a droid gets upset because droids don't share their arms off when they lose.
As far as favorite characters go, it's a tie between Chewbacca, R2D2, and C3PO.
There you go.
I get a kick out of
C3PO.
Yeah, C3PO and R2D2. The commentary.
Oh, I agree with R2. It's C3PO.
3PO's fun, dude.
That's
I
cool,
love
man.
C3PO.
It's all good. It's all good.
But I guess if I had to choose any other favorite scenes, I definitely love the compactor moment, and I do love the these aren't the droids you're looking for. I've seen it happen in so many things since. I mean, between Big Bang Theory, The Mentalist. I mean, it's been used excessively. But yeah. Okay. Tammy, did you say your favorite scenes?
Yeah.
Well, my favorite character is Chewie.
Unlike your grandmother.
Um, let's see. Favorite scenes? Well, I like the whole bar scene because I thought, you know, when that weird guy's picking on Luke, and Obi just shoot, shoot that, took care of him, and they all turned around to look, and then they all turned around the other way. And
It's
then
like that classic Western scene where someone gets blown away and they're like, oh, big deal. Happens all the time, you know?
right, and the same with later on. When Hans takes care of that dude, they all turn around and look, and they all turn away.
Grebo.
So I like that, and then um I like the like almost last scene, when um Luke, when they're all going to try and take out the Death Star, that whole thing, because it keeps you like on the edge of your seat, like who's gonna make it, who's gonna make it, you know.
Yeah, and it builds like real loyalties to the characters too, you know, because you're like, oh shit, Han's bailing right now on these guys, like in this epic final battle sequence, you know, and it's
Right.
there's a lot of ins and outs to that whole portion of it. I still think one of the really narratively like crucial sort of transitions of the movie. Anyway, continue, Tammy.
Well, that was about it. I mean, like everybody else said, there's quite a few cool scenes. And don't want to sit here and name off 20 million of them. Those are the ones that caught my attention the most.
Easy way to say it. The whole movie.
Well, that's what you would say, Crow.
I mean, I would, but there are
It's true. I've heard
there
him
are
say it.
there are some scenes that stand out more than others. So, when I say mine, I'll say why it's mine, and yeah. So I do have one scene that
One of
stands
my
out.
favorites is where old Ben gets up there and he's like, woo, 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 and he scares the sand people because it reminds me how I feel when I think of you, my friend.
Another one of my favorites is when Vader chokes the governor and he's all like,
All
you
the choking scenes are great.
Keep that in your heart.
Dustin, what about you? What's your favorite scenes and characters?
It's really difficult to pick one favorite scene. I think I would maybe have to go with like our Han Solo moments, just in general. And I do really like Han Solo. Han Solo was my favorite character. So, yeah. Maybe when he shoots Greedo, I think would be my favorite scene.
That is sick.
Or when he negotiates with Jabba.
Both scenes added and changed.
Ironically, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe just when he comes back at the end, like Yahoo! Or when he's about to leave and he's kind of trying to talk Luke into coming with them. It's like you're pretty good in a fight. Could use it. Come with us. Just kind of casually offering it. So it shows how much Luke has earned his respect.
Right. Totally. And Han is one of those people where it takes he doesn't just give it freely. You definitely have to earn it. So yeah, that's great. And Jake, did you say yours?
What's that?
You said yours?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure we got everybody. All right. So my favorite character had always been Luke Skywalker. Okay, and I still love Luke Skywalker. Okay, but
in this one, I don't know what happened. Like a lot of I've gone through a lot of changes since January. My thinking, everything has changed, and even this, I actually saw what a lot of people were saying, how whiny Luke was, and I don't know, I've never seen it until this time, and I was just like, wow, he was actually almost annoying me, how whiny he was a lot through it, and I actually also noticed how bitchy Leia was. No. Um, so I don't know exactly why that it's like that now, but so my favorite is now Han. And as much as I love R2, I always love R2. But Han is just kind of yeah, he is who he is. He's unapologetic, and he's just a great character. You know, he's not the biggest hero, but he is a hero. He does look after himself, but he does have a big heart. You know, he's a great character. You know, and I think I see that a lot more now than I ever have. How much of a great character Han Solo is. So, for the first time in 50 years, yeah, I'm now 50, guys. Or no, okay, I'm sorry. I was 4 when it came out. So last time in 46 years, I changed my opinion of who my favorite is, and it's Han Solo now. And now my favorite scene is the most iconic scene that I always think about when I think of Star Wars. It may surprise some people, but is actually the scene where where Luke and Leia are swinging across the Death Star on that rope, like I said, like Tarzan and Jane. I used to love Tarzan and Jane when I was a kid too, and I don't know, I always thought of that as well. And I don't know, just it's a really awesome scene. There's a lot of awesome scenes as well. But as much as I love Jedi and you know, lightsaber and stuff, this was my favorite scene for the original Star Wars. So and yeah, that's mine. I think we can wrap up. Any last thoughts from anyone before we finish?
I think I'm good. Good. I mean, there were a lot of like different moments that I could have said were favorites in this movie, but
Definitely.
um, I think everything is said. Unless anybody else has anything else to say. Alrighty. Heading into our outros. How about starting with you, Jake? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I am the co-host of Septum Sim versus World, where we talk about all kinds of physical media. We've been on kind of a pseudo hiatus for the time being, but we should be having a discussion coming up shortly on Tulavu, anime anticlimax. It's scheduled for this week, but I think it's going to be this week. And basically, I just work, especially this time of year has been a busy time of year. Had a huge plant fair over the weekend for the company I co-founded, RVA Homegrown Natives. But I don't make time to watch stuff to join these fine folks for our discussions, and I'm kind of glad we finally got around to Star Wars. It's gonna be good times.
Okay. Heading over to you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I collect horror movie stuff here in Milwaukee. I have a YouTube channel, The Crypt of Horrors, for showing off the things I find. I have some videos I've been trying very hard to upload for months. Like they're on there. I just need to, do their information, like the titles and stuff on them. And I keep not having the time to do that. So new videos coming hopefully soon. I post more often on my Instagram, DHR Hunter, which, oh, okay. So the Instagram is also the Crypt of Horror, but my old thing was DHR Hunter. And for some reason, when I look at my Instagram, it still shows that occasionally. But I'm working on changing everything in the Cryptaxis to be in line with my Twitter handle, Cryptaxis, which is where I hang out more so these days. So give me a like and a subscribe. If I see somebody be like, new subscriber, I'll probably be able to get more incentivized to post more things. So. And with that, I am going to go. So, because I've had a very rough day.
Well, hopefully you feel better.
I hope so.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
take
you're
care,
at the
bud.
hospital, Justin. Take care.
Yeah, I think the problem is actually back right now, though. So I don't know what to do. Like, I don't think I have a way to get to the hospital again tonight. All right, bye.
Hope you feel better.
Alrighty. Heading over to Mo. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what to do?
My name's Mo. I definitely do like a lot of podcasts sometimes. The most frequent one that I do is definitely Schlockaholics with my buddy Cody and our mutual friend Brandon, aka Septimson from Septimson versus the World. Talk a lot about low budget horror films over there and do all kinds of stuff with that. And that's pretty much it. I don't have a lot going on my personal front. I just do that podcast with those guys every other Saturday and a lot of Mondays. We're going to be doing Tuesdays for the next little while so I can get involved in these Star Wars conversations. But yeah,
We're glad
that's
you're
pretty
here.
much what we got going on. So,
I'm glad you
other
were.
than that, I just kind of work with my kid, and doing some fishing lately. I actually kissed a bass right before I got in this conversation tonight. Hoping that's the first of many of the summer.
Good times.
Yeah, catch a big one next time.
I'm working on it, man. And the whole thing is like, I'm doing this, I guess, not really like I didn't set out to do a fishing challenge, but I was like, okay, I want to go fishing. And I haven't had a fishing license since I was like, 17. So this is like 20 years in the making right here almost. And my whole thing was like, I just want like a minimalist setup, So I went and I bought like an ugly stick Dock Master, which is like a 13-inch fishing pole. Like it's like a small fishing pole.
Good times.
And people catch like pike and like steelhead on them and shit. So I don't have to worry about the strength of my pole at all. Like I can beast a monster out of that river with it. It's just about the bait, but man, catching that bass right before I got in here with you guys felt like $1 million, because it's like, all right, I do still kind of know what I'm doing. And now it's time to get those rainbow trout that I've seen jumping. I saw a big ass, like, dude, probably like 1.5 foot long rainbow trout jump out of the river earlier when I was up there. I've been playing hooky from work, like proper hooky, where you ditch out for like an hour to go fishing. And that's another thing, those little Dock
Literal
Master
hooky.
Yeah, literally, I was playing hooky. And I got some great bites, but I'm just not finding the bait or the lure combo that I need to do. And that's the beauty of it, man. Getting out there and like hunting down those fish and figuring out what bait they want to bite on,
My sister can't wait to go out with and teach her 3-year-old daughter how to fish. So
Cool.
she's they're going to this weekend. I think she said they're going to go get some fishing poles and stuff.
Yeah, man. It's a very cool practical skill to have. And it's also a lot of fun.
My sister can gut and skin a fish too. She actually worked at a grocery store for a short time. And like, you want us to show you how to do it? And she's like, I know how. They didn't really believe her until she's like, you want me to skin it for you? A customer, and she skinned it in like 2 seconds. They were just like, holy crap. My uncle Carl, who's the one that took me to Star Wars. After that, he didn't do anything with me, but he brought her fishing all the time. He taught her how to gut fish and all that other stuff. And I said to my sister, well, I'm glad you know, and I don't want to learn you, in my opinion. But she knows how to do all that.
Yeah, man, it's good fun. And just even catching that fish, or like even before I caught the fish, I went the other night and just threw my lure in the water, and I got like a big ass bass to like flash at the lure like it was about to grab it. And I got so excited, and it just reminded me of like why I used to do it when I was a kid, like a teenager.
Right.
If I catch one of those big rainbow trout, I'm cooking the fuck out of that thing.
Cool.
But it's
Well,
also
if you check the message when you're done here, you'll see something else you can put on your list.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got going on. So if you want pictures of me kissing bass, follow me on social media, and then probably some B movie reviews. We're going to be reviewing Closing Time from Jim Roberts this Saturday. So
I've only ever heard of the song, so I didn't know there was a movie called that.
Looks pretty gory.
It has to be if it's one of your movies.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm David's fiance, and I go on this channel and another and talk about movies and listen to other people's opinions. And I have a collection of my own. And now that the weather's getting better, I'll finally get to take out my car and go to the car shows.
Broom, broom. But she's a member of some club too.
Yep. So heading over to you, Kroll. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, 11 years ago I got disabled, but I am no longer unemployed. I actually started my own business. I'm actually, at the moment, pretty much working from the time I wake up at 7 in the morning to the time I go to bed about 1 in the morning. With little breaks, I decided to take a break and come on the podcast today. I came on one yesterday too. But I'd even been missing these for a couple times, not on purpose. It's just I've been so busy trying to get it up and running. I now have my own YouTube channel. Never thought that would ever happen. That's at YouTube at Kroll's World of Solutions. Check it out. I have lots of short videos right now. Me, telling my story and saying good morning to people and showing off some products we market. And I plan on putting some motivational videos on there. I just have to find out legally what I have to do to be able to do that, because I don't want to just put them on there. Now, one of the main ones I want to do is Jim Rohn's. He has passed away, so I know he's not going to mind, but someone might. I don't know if someone owns it or what, so I have to legally find that out, and I haven't been able to yet. But as soon as I can, I would like to put some motivational stuff on there, because I've found it very, very life-changing. Some stuff that I've heard, and I'm totally into listening to it now, and I love that. I love how I'm changing, and I finally told that little voice in my head to shut the hell up. It said you're too old to change. When I first started doing this, I just turned 50, so but like most people say, you're never too old to change, and I'm finally. I was adverse to change my whole life. And even if it was good change, I was like, no, you're going to drag me away kicking and screaming. But finally, I'm up for change, and I've been changing a lot. I've lost almost 25 pounds in under 2 months, mostly due to 2 products I've been taking. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and I love this new path I'm on, and it's been great, and much more upbeat, happy, and positive because of it. So it's awesome. And I come on, like I said, I haven't really been a guest star much on other podcasts because I've been busy. I do plan on being on Moe's for when he does the Ewok movies, which he hasn't mentioned yet, but I guess I just did. Let the Ewok out of the bag. When he does that, I will be coming on for that as well. And probably hitting a little podcast here and there. I'm not doing the anime right now because, like I said, kind of has stepped back some. But I'll be doing those stuff again when
business gets more settled and I'm done learning the bulk of things and figuring out how to do the bulk of things. So I'll be looking forward to going back to having a little bit of fun time. But I had 11 years of fun, so it was time to actually put in some work. And so my work is fun and a blast, so it doesn't feel like work, but I've still been working, morning to late night. So that's what I'm up to, and that's me. So check out my YouTube if you so inclined. I am on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok. I probably forgot something more than I've ever even heard of in the past. I'm on them all now. That's social media for my business is big, so I'm doing a lot with that. So love to get new people and new followers and new friends, and so anybody wants to look for me, Ron Thurber. Usually you can find me on most of the platforms under my real name. So look for me if you want. Thanks.
Alrighty. My name is David Sturgey. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along on this fabulous journey that we've been having. Finally got through Star Wars. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed our discussion that we've had tonight.
And where do we go next week, Dave?
Let me get to that. But we are going to be going to on Sunday. We're gonna be covering Ready Player One. But next week, Delusions of Grandeur will be Inside Movies Galore. Will be covering the following film after Star Wars, which is Empire Strikes Back. So look forward to checking that out, and hopefully you can enjoy another discussion with us if you get a chance. And but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also podcast on Sundays with Kroll and my good buddy Boris and Tammy, my fiance, and we have a blast doing these discussions. And I also do video pickups and video reviews from time to time, so check some of those out. Like, share, and subscribe. And may the force be with you all, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this Star Wars journey. Everyone, say goodnight.
May the force be with you.
All right.
And may the fourth be with you.
All right.